What weird thing would you make socially acceptable if you could? Asking a potential employer what the salary for a position is before jumping through 50 hoops with the application and interview process, only to find out it pays garbage. Calling out customers for being rude. I had a job as a teller at a credit union back in college, and I'll always say the manager I had was one of the best I've ever worked with. I once had a lady who kept asking me for a new credit card and handed me her debit card. I looked on her account and said, "There is no credit card. There's a debit card, which is what this is, but that's the only card on this account. I can issue you a new one with no problem, but if you want a credit card, you'll have to fill out an application." She was adamant that what she had was in fact a credit card. No matter what I told her, she said it was a credit card and demanded a new one. At one point she said, "Are you stupid or something?" To which my manager overheard, pushed me out of the way and said, "You will not speak to him that way, and if you're going to continue behaving this way, you're going to have to leave. I won't tolerate you speaking to my employees like that." I wish more managers were like her. I'm a guy and I get a lot of flack for complimenting people's clothing. I don't think it's weird, but apparently it means I must like men. If you've got nice shoes, I'm going to say they're nice shoes. As a woman who's dating a man who's very fashion-forward and compliments things like that constantly, I highly encourage this. Compliments from women about your clothes is one thing, because we compliment everything and your dog, but from a man, it just hits different. We should destroy the thought that the customer is always right. Draping myself in velvet. Complimenting other men. Being able to sit in silence with someone without it being awkward. People shouldn't feel obligated to come up with conversation, it makes interacting stressful. I don't believe in awkward silences. Talk about something when it comes to you and conversations will always feel more real and interesting. When you're able to sit in silence with someone comfortably, I feel it shows you enjoy their company. Me and my best friend sometimes do this. We order food a lot and find a deserted place, usually the roof of some building, and we just sit there eating. Most of the time we talk, but those moments of tranquility and peace are really nice. Best friend I ever had. We still don't talk sometimes. The narrator is probably a lot of people's worst nightmare when it comes to not being able to hold silences. You know that insufferable person who'll wait less than 10 seconds into a comfortable silence before asking a question to get the conversation started again? Hi, it's me. Being able to be honest about how you feel without being bullied or belittled. Being able to just wave or say hi to people you hardly know. There's nothing worse than an awkward 5-minute catch-up chat at the store with someone I haven't seen in years. Sitting, on the floor or anywhere really. Cashiers need to be allowed to sit. The fact that most places don't let them is a load of BS. If other people are at my house having fun but I'm tired, I just want to be able to go to bed, but they can stay and have a good time. My dad doesn't say anything at all, he just disappears. Later you'll find him watching reruns of CSI Miami in his room, munching on gummy candies. He does not care. Openly talking about your finances with other people. A lot of people don't realize they're underpaid because nobody talks about wages. It's so bizarre to me that it's a taboo subject. We all rely on money in some form, let's just discuss it. I just wanted to state that finances, in my view, include things like how much debt you have, what your rent and other bills are, how much you have saved, stuff like that. I can see how there'd be negatives to discussing your salary with coworkers or family, but in my opinion, the negatives brought up that I've read from the replies don't bother me. The people who'd be offended or have expectations of me are not people that I'd end up highly valuing their opinion. If I'm doing better than a family member or friend and they need help, I'll help them. But if they're jealous, greedy, or generally not supportive, then I don't need them in my life. People in the service industry should be able to tell a customer when they're being a butthole. My old boss from when I worked retail flat out told me on my first day that so long as I wasn't being a total jerk, he'd always have my back if a customer was being a butt, and I didn't bend over backwards for them. He banned a couple of people from the store over their antics while I was there, and it blew a couple of Karens' minds when he told them to shut up and act their age when they tried their usual screaming fest. I loved that job. I'd like to make it socially acceptable to tell employers that you're only in it for the money and it be a legitimate answer. What, am I supposed to tell employers that I've always wanted to work a part-time job and get yelled at by Karens just so I could make ends meet? Eating alone at a restaurant or a solo movie trip. I mean, sort of limited now due to the pandemic, but before COVID, when people would hear of me doing that, they said they felt terrible and how depressing it sounded. I was like, why? It's just another day for me. It doesn't feel weird or anything. It's quite nice to get away from constant chats and have a nice quiet meal while being out and about. Neutral facial expressions. People act like anything that isn't definitely a smile is some sort of insult. It's another reason to appreciate masks. What's the matter? Absolutely nothing. This is my face. Having your work ethic, not your butt-kissing skills, prioritized and appreciated, both in jobs and in school. Staying silent if you really don't have anything to say. Short naps at work. Wearing cloaks, Lord of the Rings style. Screw jackets. All of my homies wear medieval cloaks. I dig this idea. Outfits can be so boring. I want to go out dressed like the Mandalorian or something. Taking a social time out without having to smoke or occupy the bathroom. My workday is 6 to 8 hours, it's an open-plan office, lunch is social, and I have at least an hour commute per day. That is at least twice my maximum social energy per day. Similarly, not being expected to socialize with coworkers during my lunch hour. I desperately need the alone time to recharge, but I'm sure people think I'm an antisocial butthole because I'll straight get up and walk out if someone comes into the kitchen while I'm there. I'll greet them quickly and be nice, but I have to get the frick out before the inevitable small talk starts or I'll lose my crap. Staying home when sick. I really hoped this pandemic would improve the mindset, but nope, people still think you're a lazy piece of crap if you stay home when you're sick. I've always genuinely gotten mad when people came to work sick. A long time ago, I was a restaurant manager, and I just didn't understand why my GM insisted that sick people come in and hack up all over the food. We were almost never truly understaffed. I moved to a corporate call support job, and I thought it would be better. Nope. People were afraid of losing their jobs, so they came in no matter what because it was expected, even when it resulted in exponentially more sick people, which led to a loss in productivity. We were a frickin' software company where every employee technically had full remote capabilities, yet it took a frickin' global pandemic to normalize working from home. Dressing however you want. Makeup, dresses, medieval cloaks, whatever you want, regardless of gender too. That'd be nice. I think people should be able to wear whatever they want as long as it covers things most people don't want to see. Just walk around in cosplay if you want to. I wish everyone felt comfortable to dress however they'd want to. Being awake late at night and sleeping all morning. I've been like this since I was a kid. Circadian rhythm is just backwards. I can't fall asleep before 3 a.m. I wish people didn't treat me like I was lazy or something. I'm a pretty productive guy. I just get my work done while you're all asleep. I do not understand people like you at all, sir or madam, but maybe if we occupy the same desk we can produce an epic amount of work from one centralized spot, because I get the vast majority of my work done before midday. 4-day work weeks. Staying completely silent in other people's company. I wish that people would stop conflating women not wearing makeup with being unprofessional. I worked in a place where a girl was told she looked unprofessional when she didn't wear makeup. Yikes. The IRS telling you how much you owe in taxes. The IRS actually wants to do this. They're blocked by lobbying from the tax accounting industry. In virtually every situation in America when you can ask, why aren't we doing this obvious thing that's obviously better, the answer is corporate lobbyists. Hell, the reason daylight savings time isn't permanent, i.e. we stop moving the clocks back and forward, is largely due to TV lobbyists who want it to get dark early so that we sit at home watching TV. Running in public to get to places quicker. Back when I actually went to the office in the city, I remember seeing this one woman a few different times running, and not in your typical running clothes, but in a business suit during your typical rush hour times. The first time I thought she must be late to something. A few more times and I thought, wow, this lady is always late. Finally, I just decided she must just like running to or from places. Being able to take a day off because you just want to, as opposed to having to come up with an excuse. For myself in the UK, there's a bit in the leave application for details, but everyone leaves it blank. No boss cares unless it might screw up a project. Wearing nicer clothes than normal for no reason. Yes, I'm usually in jeans and a t-shirt at work. Yes, today I decided to wear a suit. No, I don't have a job interview or have to go to court. Wearing shorts at work during summer. Why wear pants when you could be more comfortable? I worked in an office where shorts were allowed but not jeans. The CEO had some kind of weird anti-denim hang-up. No jorts and no denim skirts either. I quit after 3 months for many other reasons. Not wearing a bra. I feel like everyone notices when I don't wear one in public and other women give rude looks. I just want to be comfortable. Not being always productive and not devoting one's life to making money. Yes, siestas in the middle of the workday. Please. Capes. No capes. Although I will say that Director Krennic's cape was Superfly. I would also accept Doctor Strange's flying cloak if you've come to bargain. Correcting other people's kids. Not physically, but telling them to quit their bullcrap if their parents aren't doing it. Yes, and also being able to comment on parents being negligent with correcting their kids in public settings like restaurants. If your kid is throwing food around and you do nothing to stop it, I want to hold you accountable without you making a scene, please. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Walking my pig on a leash. When my dog was a puppy, we met a guy walking his pig on a leash. My dog was so confused, he just rolled over and showed it his belly. Skipping. It's more fun and energy efficient than running. I sometimes do it when I'm alone because I like the way it feels. Probably readjusting your sack. I hate it when mine gets stuck in a weird spot, but I can't move it until I get home. Talking about our mental health issues. We all face some level of depression or anxiety. Why are we lying and pretending to be happy all the time? You know that thing we all do where we're walking and suddenly realize we're going the wrong direction or need to change direction? So we stop, pull out our phones, pretend like we read something, and then start walking off in a new direction? Yeah, I just start randomly changing directions on the fly. Is this actually a thing? I'll just turn around. No one gives a shot what I'm doing. I'm just some random walking down the street. Why would they care if I turn around? Men should be allowed to express emotions without being seen as weak. It upsets me to see people in pain due to things that aren't their fault. Going out in more costume-style clothing. I'm not talking about overpriced Halloween store crap either. I mean being able to walk around in full Victorian-era clothing, Jedi robes, or good pirate wear. I'm tired of looking normal, damn it. Introverts being allowed to skip parties without being judged. As wonderful as that would be, I don't think that would ever kill the FOMO for some of them. Personal feelings aren't likely to change that much based on how acceptable it is to skip a party. Frilly dresses for adults. Am I the only one? I loved wearing them at Christmas and Easter as a little girl. Now, I feel like I can't get away with it. Satin, lace, pastel-covered ruffles, puffy sleeves, embroidered flowers and ribbons, a skirt that flies out when you spin around, maybe even a corset. Looks silly on a grown woman, especially if everyone else is wearing blue jeans and t-shirts. I just sure miss dressing up like that. Classifying women not wearing makeup as lazy and normalizing a fresh face on women, even to formal events. Sure, it looks nice, but can't a lady just rock some nice hair and a fancy outfit the same way men do? I was going to write along the lines of wearing little to no makeup becoming more socially acceptable versus the way it's interpreted now. I hate the generic responses of, "Oh, you didn't have time? I have some cosmetics in my purse. Are you okay? You look sick." You know, all that usual stuff. Men hugging each other often and showing affection. I used to see this when I was younger, then I think as a society we just decided to label such behavior as gay. Not drinking alcohol at gatherings. Dressing for comfort over style. I want to live in a world where it's perfectly fine to show up at a job interview in a sweatshirt. The need to wear nice clothes is an arbitrary rule we created for ourselves. Women also being able to skip wearing anything on their torso. It sucks that in hot weather, men and kids can roam around shirtless, but a woman can practically get arrested in some places for having her chest on display. Bras and bikini tops are freaking uncomfortable, not to mention the rubbish tan lines. I mean, at least people have started to make feeding your baby in public less of an issue, so who knows? Maybe I'll be able to pull them out in a few years. As a flat-chested woman, this annoys me the most. Those fat old dudes who have bigger melons than me can walk around freely shirtless, but if I show some skin, suddenly I'm a predator of some sort. Mothers can't even naturally feed their babies without getting shamed. I hate the South. Telling someone you're child-free or don't want children without being told, "You'll change your mind," and other related nonsense. Unfortunately, a lot of people find us odd or not real women for being uninterested in having children. It's not for everyone. Swinging around toy lightsabers when you're a teenager or adult. Abruptly leaving conversations that you don't want to participate in. For example, one could simply declare, "This bores me, goodbye," and then promptly depart. Going to the bathroom for 15 minutes. Let men drink sweet cocktails without being judged. Being asexual or aromantic. Uncomfortable silences. Why do we feel it's necessary to yak about BS in order to be comfortable? Being nice to kids. As a man, I'd just say talking to kids that aren't yours. Moms catch me just casually chatting with their kid and they get all defensive because I'm a stranger. It's tragic as a society that we live in constant fear and instill distrust in our children. I want to dance anywhere in public. No, I'm not on anything, I just love to dance. Not talking or smiling to anyone in public. It has nothing to do with you, people aren't happy all the time, and sometimes I just want to get in and get out. Walking cats on leashes or in strollers. I walk my elderly cat in a stroller. She has kidney disease and likes to threaten birds. I'm determined to give her this beautiful retirement. Screw what other people think. Just being able to walk around wearing only your skin without people deciding that you're randy or an exhibitionist or whatever. Being free of clothes in the sun is an experience I wish everyone could have. Wearing cute childish stuff. People giving weird looks kinda ruins the fun. I personally don't think it's weird, but the majority of my country thinks it is. I'd make gay marriage legal in my country. Here in Hungary, it's an unaccepted thing. Saying the phrase, "I'm happy" or "this makes me happy." One time I made the mistake of saying that about my hobbies, and the person I talked to looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. As adult people, it's frowned upon to make emotional remarks, and it shouldn't have to be weird if you want to share it. Besides, being or feeling happy is a disposition per se, and shouldn't have to relate to being an emotional talk. It's exhausting having to give explanations. Top hats and capes. Dumpster diving. As a society, we throw away so much, normalizing dumpster diving would save a lot of salvageable items from going into a landfill. No chit-chat as a social default. Man, this one just keeps coming up, huh? Again, I think I'm a villain to a lot of people who desire this. Maybe I'll just try shutting my pie hole next time silence hits. Not wanting to work hard. Not as in not wanting to have a job, but openly being able to admit that the prospect of working at least 35 hours a week for most of your life is insanely depressing and unappealing. Wearing a mask to not spread viruses. Requiring employers to post a salary on job posts. Everyone can stop wasting time this way. Plus, better chance at fair wages. A lot of things people seem to find weird that are actually harmless. Stimming, humming, hand flapping, preferring not to communicate verbally, enjoying quiet or being unintentionally loud. I guess I'd just like to normalize being polite. Let people be odd as long as they're harmless. For the past 6 years, I've been sleeping with him in exchange for discounts on our supplies and Outback Steakhouse gift certificates. People wearing masks. I love putting mine on so people don't see my face. Not wanting to hustle or make someone else rich. I don't want to put in 60 work hours so I can have a materially successful life. Dungeons and Dragons. It's not really as weird as people think. It's acting. We watch TV, movies, plays, it's not any different. And you're playing a board game at the same time. People really need to get over the whole satanic panic thing. It's not devil worship, and it's not really all that weird. It's a much more social activity and more mentally stimulating than binging Netflix or playing video games, and it's helped me make and sustain great friendships. A friend started DMing for a group of friends that have never played before during the pandemic, and I've got to say it's the night of the week that I look forward to the most. But not just do stupid Zoom calls where we talk about COVID for an hour. Also, my character is part of my soul now. It's insane how quickly I connected to the guy. Men should be able to wear skirts and dresses. Sometimes we need some air down there and to look cute. And yes, I know kilts exist, but that's the Scots thing. Let people like what they like without being bullied for it. Not ironing our clothes. Like seriously, they don't really look worse if you don't do it, and if no one did it, we'd save so much time. Not shaving your legs. It's so wild to me that the assumption is that women should shave their legs because men think they'll look prettier that way. But men don't need to shave their legs because apparently women wouldn't think men would look prettier with shaved legs? Wearing the same attire every day. Not the same pair as the previous day, but the same type of shirts and pants. Carrying around stuffed animals. They make me happy. I used to work at restaurants and some employees were allowed to take breaks to smoke. I didn't smoke, so I never got any breaks. Every now and then, I'd just go stand in the walk-in freezer to cool off after I'd been running around the restaurant. My peers didn't like that I randomly disappeared for 5 minutes every now and then. I told them it's my smoke break. So I feel like short 5-minute breaks should just be allowed even if you're not a smoker. Platonic cuddling. Doing things later in the day. Getting groceries at 10 p.m. or spa appointments at 8 p.m. and able to do vacuuming in my condo at midnight without my neighbors complaining. Society is set up for a 9-to-5 life. I agree with everything you've said except vacuuming at midnight. That would make me so angry. Whether I like it or not, I have to be up early, and hearing someone vacuum at midnight is just a jerk move. Do the stuff that would affect others during normal hours and do the quiet stuff on your schedule. 4-day work week. Men should be allowed to call their male friends their boyfriends, as ladies can call her female friends her girlfriends. Gotta level that playing field out.
Redditors who have walked in on their significant other cheating. What were the next 30 minutes like? I walked in and she was acting very nervous. She also wouldn't let me walk to the room. It clicked and I got literal tunnel vision. Such a strange sensation. I don't remember too much, but the outer edges of my vision were black and I can only hear my own breathing. I guess I pushed her aside like she was a broom. Thankfully didn't hurt her. Then I went into the room and realized he was in the bathroom. What I remember is that I opened the door like a regular person. The broken door and her account say that I Hulk smashed the door open with my fist. I grabbed him and calmly escorted him out of the house without saying a word. He was bawling like a 12-year-old girl. I closed the front door, turned around, and told her she had an hour to get all of her stuff and leave. I watched SportsCenter until she was gone. I didn't walk in, but I was helping her study and grabbed her phone from between us to Google something. I was immediately greeted with a long string of explicit text with her "just friend." I set her phone down and left without a word. I sat in the fetal position beside my car in the parking deck for a good hour before I could even process it. We broke up later that day. She married him less than a year later, and they're divorced now. No happy endings for anyone in that story. I was pretty much trembling and wasn't capable of talking, just holding my tears. My hands were a bit shaky too. I wanted nothing but silence. One of the worst feelings ever. Didn't walk in. Caught him leaving as I went over the next morning to drop something off. She was in her skimpy nightwear kissing him goodbye. First thing that actually flashed across my mind was, I gotta get out of here or things are gonna go down. I was suddenly aware how I have anger issues, and that got a concealed carry license, and that I was carrying a loaded gun at that very moment. Looked at his smug face. Looked at her panicked face. Looked at his smug face again. Turned and left. Climbed on my bike and sped off. I never rode as fast, as recklessly, or as furiously as that time. I actually think I was trying to off myself. I did crash the bike. I was in such a murderous rage that I kept thinking faster for some reason. I entered a curve way too fast and slipped while leaning trying to make it. I got up, realized I was messed up, then kept walking into the middle of nowhere. I sat in a clearing and remained there until a policeman found me. I told him what had happened and handed him my gun, telling it was best he had used it because I felt the thing was demanding to be used. It was just my anger at the time. Police officer was sympathetic, drove me to the hospital and called a tow for the bike. The ride to the ER, I got to chatting with he and his partner. 10 minutes go by and we're all laughing our butts off lost in random conversation. Me and those guys are good friends to this day, and in many shenanigans we have been involved since. Regarding her, I never bothered to check. TLDR, got cheated on, gained best friends after trying to endanger self. I'm glad this one at least had a happy ending. Calmly went to the hardware store and bought all new locks for the doors. When I got home, she was already there. Kicked her out, changed locks. This is the manliest response I've ever heard. I was pretty much just shaking and stunned, so I walked my bike home and just went, huh, well that sucks. She kept trying to call the house phone, but I wasn't answering. It was surreal. I reacted like, okay, I'll wait in the living room while you finish. 3 days later, I utterly lost my crap. Still haven't found it. I didn't walk in on it happening, but I saw it coming and did everything I could to stop it, including telling my girlfriend that if the woman I suspected her having a thing with came to my apartment when I wasn't there, it was over between us. She constantly told me nothing was happening between them, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt. When I was out of state for a funeral a week later, I went through the Google Home app and noticed recordings of the Google Home speaker being used after midnight. I listened to them and heard the recordings of my now ex-girlfriend and the other woman using my Google Home. I came back 4 days later, had this on my chest for 4 days, and asked my girlfriend as we laid in bed next to each other if anyone came to the apartment while I was gone. She looked me in the eyes and said no. I said, again, was girl's name in my apartment while I was home for a funeral. She continued looking me in the eyes, laying inches away from me, and said no. I picked up my phone and played the Google Home recording and asked her, then who the heck is this? She was a deer in the headlights. She couldn't speak for 5 minutes. I told her she was a liar, a manipulator, and a freaking coward, and told her to get the heck out. She left her Facebook open on my laptop I let her use for school. 4 years and an engagement. During the affair, I paid her taxes and paid to remove her wisdom teeth, all while she screwed the guy I didn't need to worry about in our bed. In our room I paid rent for. It really felt like getting hit by a bus. I couldn't breathe, threw up multiple times, and finally slept when I passed out drunk. Found out he was cheating on me for 4 months while he was miles away. I was just angry as heck and punched a wall in my house. The morning after I found out, I went to work and I asked my boss to transfer me to another state. A few weeks after going to another state, I met the love of my life, and we now have a puppy and are getting a house together. Wife of 6 years got a new job in medical device sales and was out of town for 3 weeks straight for training. The first 2 weeks went okay, but she had never traveled before, so it was difficult on both of us. I have several friends who work in the industry, and they all pretty much paint the same picture. Lots of alcohol, lots of hooking up. It's okay, not my wife. She would never. But the next time we spoke, she could tell something was wrong. She had been talking about this guy quite a bit in our conversations, so I asked about him. Oh, he's nobody, just another rep from another state in training with her. Regardless, that afternoon, I got a text from him, explaining that my wife had told him that I was asking about him, and he decided to text me to reassure me that he was married, had 3 kids, nothing was going on. I bought it. And then, the night before she comes home, it happens. 4 a.m., I get a phone call from her, but in my slumber, I sent it to voicemail. She was absolutely wasted and had drunkenly dialed my phone instead of his and left a voicemail. The voicemail consisted of explicit details of their intimate encounters that week, and since they will be traveling together in the future, the continuation of more intimate encounters were promised, including details on how she loved it when he did X to her Y and Z. I got out of bed, walked down the hallway to our daughter's rooms, 2 and 4 at the time, grabbed both of them, and brought them to bed with me. I held them tight while they slept on each side of me, while I cried the remainder of the night. Not for me, but for them, because their world was going to get turned upside down in less than 12 hours from now. I then got out of bed, logged onto her computer, and, after a little investigative sleuthing, I forwarded every iMessage, every picture as well as the voicemail she drunkenly sent me to his wife. So to clarify a few things, this is a throwaway account, so any questions regarding 5-day-old account, etc. are because of that. First of all, thank you for the support, fellow Redditors. This happened a while ago and I moved on. It still hurts. I still haven't come to trust anyone fully yet, but really, I have no interest. I'm only 36, so I'm just having fun working on being a better me. Regarding paying support, even though she makes twice I do, I pay support because it's my duty to my kids, regardless what she makes. I'm not hurting for cash, not by any means, and neither is she. And yes, the court system is heavily flawed and biased towards mothers. In cases like this, the girls should be living with me. But again, thank you for being awesome, Reddit. Fun story. I'm a bit late to the party, but I'll share anyway. Had a buddy that I had not seen for a while come to town. We were going to meet up and go drinking, but I ended up having to close because someone called in sick. Buddy goes out and parties all night. I tell him to call if he needs a ride. Get the call at about 3 a.m. to come get him at some chick's house. He gives me the address and it's my girlfriend's address. She lives with her sister, so I thought he went home with the sis. I walk in the house and head to my significant other's bedroom, and guess who's there? My buddy. Should have seen the look on her face, and it was priceless. Buddy asks what's going on. I tell him, let's go, and tell her to kindly screw off. She's crying, and Buddy is starting to get the picture. Tell him she was my friend of about 5 months. He feels terrible and is apologizing profusely. I tell Home we're even if he buys me breakfast. So we go get breakfast. I look at it as he did me a favor, nothing to feel bad about. TLDR, caught my buddy diddling my girlfriend, made him buy me breakfast. I can't help but laugh at this one because there are a lot of factors that I don't really know about, but it makes so much sense to have this kind of attitude after finding out about this. If she had did this to you, screw her. No reason to keep her around. She was doing him a favor. She was telling him straight up that she didn't think he was worth it. And honestly, she isn't worth it. Massive W to this man. Went on a brunch date after staying the night at her place. Some Irish dude was flirting with her while we ate and drank. I got up to take a dump and smoke a cig. I'm halfway through my smoke when she walked out the door holding hands with the dude from the bar. I wasn't even mad. Even waved as she left. I calmly sent a text saying we were done, which she didn't respond to until the next day. Apparently, I was overreacting, according to her. I laughed, hung up on her, then left to join my friends on the week-long camping trip we had planned. Again, more responses from the dudes that are nothing short of based. I love this. Kinda late to the party, but here's my story. Was with my girlfriend for 3.5 years. She spent a weekend with her friend. I trusted her because at the time it was my longest relationship and I didn't have a reason not to trust her. I didn't walk in on her, but one day she mentioned how she wanted to go see him again. The next morning I said, "Hey, can I use your phone to call my dad? Mine is messing up." I went through her messages and he said, "I loved the way you blew me," along with a bunch of other stuff. I walked back in the room, woke her up and said, "We're done." I felt crappy at first for going through her phone because it was wrong, then went to my best friend's house and got drunk and played video games. It was actually a pretty fun day after that. My ex before that cheated on me with the roommate we had move in with us. I was downstairs watching TV and heard them in the bedroom. I knocked on the door and she pretty much told me to screw off. I moved out the same day into my friend's place. Got drunk and played video games. Every girlfriend I've ever had has cheated on me. Video games haven't, though. Not quite the ask, of course, but similar. My ex always stayed up way later than me because of his shift patterns, so I'd gone to bed around midnight and he was up watching TV. For whatever reason, I couldn't sleep well that night and was in and out for a couple of hours. About 2 a.m., I hear the bedroom door slowly open and I'm about to ask him if he's coming to bed when I realize he's just standing there in the doorway. I'm guessing he couldn't see that I was awake in the darkness. Then, he inches the door shut so it doesn't make a noise. I hear him put on his shoes and the front door slowly, carefully open and close. He came back around 4 a.m. to me sitting on the sofa and just about crapped his pants that I was awake. I just knew, and his reaction confirmed it. We broke up that night, but he was never brave enough to admit to that occasion of cheating or the dozens more that came before it. That I had to find out from others. Then, because we just signed a tenancy agreement, I had to live with him for almost a full year. Best year ever. This was so long ago that it is almost funny to think about because it made me a better person. I truly believe that. In college, scumbag boyfriend's ex-girlfriend was in town and we were all at a party together. They were from the same hometown and had a lot of mutual friends. I got too drunk and left. He told me he was staying and would come over in an hour. I had a lot of friends there too who were keeping an eye out. I got home and immediately got a call from a friend that they snuck off together to his apartment. We lived in the same complex, so it was about a 4-minute walk away. I sprinted back to his place, my best friend sprinting after me, walked into his room to see them. Best friend runs in and punches the girl in the face. All pretty much a blur after that. Some yelling, crying, punching a wall, then just went home and cried a bunch. About 10 years later, wouldn't trade it for anything. Sobering experience and made me stronger. Unfortunately, this user paints a less exciting picture. It was like time stopped, like in a Wes Anderson movie. Everything was slow motion. He was passed out naked in his bed with some chick who told me to close the door. His housemate was rambling something frantically in front of me, but I was not there. I remember getting into the car and driving to a park, sitting in the driver's seat until I burst into tears. It was incredibly disassociated. It broke my heart, but I wasn't conscious when it happened. I related to a deep cut. There's a few moments of nothing until the blood starts to pour out uncontrollably and the excruciating pain starts. Not the crazy story others have, but went to visit her on my lunch break while she was visiting her family. I was in high school at the time and we had been dating for almost a year, so it might inform the story later. Her mother informs me she's at a friend's house up the street, so I go and check. It's the guy I've suspected for a while, and I ask if she's there. She answers the door in a skimpy tank top and short shorts and immediately starts crying when she sees me. I walk away, not even being bothered to care at this point since it has been building for like 3 months. She follows, crying, telling me it isn't what it looks like, and at one point falls down onto the grass. I walk to my car and tell her she has 1 hour to drop off everything my family has let her use/given her before she will vacate her stuff from my house, and I drive home. She shows up, gives over everything including car keys, house key, and other items. I was basically supporting her, distancing herself from them. She leaves and I take the rest of the day off in a haze. That's about the end. I am kind of a distant person in general, so the emotional part wasn't the biggest issue until it hit later in the day. This is a little confusing due to how many people are involved. I'll try to make it easy. So I wasn't the one that walked in on them. It was the drummer of my band. He was living with the guy my girlfriend cheated on me with. He, drummer, called me and told me, then said, "I'm on my way to your apartment to pack up your stuff." I contacted my mom and told her I need to move back home for a little bit. She was more than happy. She hated my girlfriend, so while my GF was still sleeping in bed with her screw buddy, I was home packing up everything. Best part was, she didn't have a job, so it was literally everything. I had it all moved out before she even got home. She had no idea why I moved, because, unknown to her and her screw buddy, my drummer was there the whole time. His car was at the shop, so someone else brought him home. They thought he was gone for the night. Long story short, she started dating an even different guy a few weeks later and called me drunk one night asking me to sleep with her. I didn't, but I made sure word got to her new boyfriend. Also, our favorite TV show together was Lie to Me, so I made sure that when I moved out, I hid all the DVDs of the show around the apartment for her to find. That alone made me feel a little better. Hope this wasn't too confusing. Dude, hiding the DVDs, that's a respectable kind of petty. Didn't walk in on, but my then boyfriend called and asked me to drop off his phone at his work. I go to retrieve the phone and it vibrated, so I looked to see who it was. Found all sorts of communication from a woman that is not safe for work. This was back in 2008 and my ex had a flip phone. I snapped it in half and threw it out. Wasn't a walk-in, but I still love telling this story because in hindsight, it's pretty freaking funny how horrendous this situation was. Was on and off with someone for years. She had commitment issues, to me at least. All of a sudden, we're talking more often for a few weeks. She seems more serious and wants to take a trip with me. We take a ferry ride out to this secluded island off the west coast of Florida to camp for a few days. Has a beach and bike trail. Second day we're there, I get a really long text from some random number, and it turns out she's been screwing her ex, guy she was dating in between our on and off, while talking to me. What's worse, she got him to watch her dog while her and I were on this trip. He was suspicious about how she had been acting, so we went through her texts on her MacBook and found out she was with me. Believe it or not, it gets even worse. The ferry that took us to this island wouldn't be back for another full 24 hours, so we had to stay another night there. I got bitten up by bugs that night, and then we awkwardly packed up all our crap the next afternoon and drove 2 hours back home together the next day, hardly speaking in that period. She dropped me off and drove to deal with her ex, and I never spoke to her again. Silver lining, I'm now happily married to the love of my life, and it's definitely not this woman. In my mid-20s, I was living with someone I'd been in love with for years. He said he loved me, but didn't want to commit and was interested in a polyamorous lifestyle. I did what I could to give him time to figure out what he wanted. We did everything together for 2 years. Traveled to Europe, went on vacations every couple months. We'd meet women online together and bring them home for crazy intimacy parties. My sex drive was off the charts back then, and I didn't really care if it was a guy or a girl helping get me off. We did a lot of crazy experimentation together. To this day, he knows more about me than any other person, and vice versa. Eventually, my self-esteem and sanity began to wear thin. Our relationship broke down. He began to bring around one of our former playthings more and more. He'd always told me that I didn't need to worry about her because he wasn't really interested in her. It was just intimacy, and loved me most. Anyway, it came to the point where I needed to leave. I found an apartment with some friends, but wouldn't be able to move in for about 45 days. I told him I knew he was going to play with other girls, but begged him to not bring them home overnight until I could get out. It just hurt too much. One night I came home and heard giggling in his room. I was staying in a room next to his. I knew it was her. I texted him, asking why he couldn't just wait a little longer because he knew he was destroying me. He texted back, insisting that no one was there and I was crazy. Later, I heard moaning and gasping. Long story short, I saw her in the hallway the next morning. She smirked at me. I moved out 2 weeks early when my place opened up unexpectedly. He married the girl, but still toyed with my emotions up until the actual wedding. Whenever they had problems, he'd always come back, talking about second chances and how we were made for one another. I'm a happily married woman now, living in a wonderful city. I have a dog and nice apartment. I'm still not sure I'll ever recover from the rage and pain that man put me through. Just a quick PSA side rant here. Polyamorous relationships are definitely not for everyone. It involves a lot of communication between partners. For scumbags like this guy, it was an excuse to cheat. That's not how it goes for everyone. For people who are actually poly or part of a polycule, they're way happier with their partners because they're willing to have these conversations and not go behind each other's backs. It's all about setting and respecting boundaries. On my birthday, I got sick so I couldn't go out and celebrate, but my now ex-wife had arranged a big celebration with lots of friends, so of course she went out because it's crappy to cancel at the last minute on so many people. Anyway, I just went to bed and slept. 2 a.m. rolls around and she drunkenly climbs into bed, which wakes me up, but she didn't notice, and started texting and trying to take nude pictures, seriously, to guys. I saw because I was awake, took the phone from her, went through everything. She had multiple dating apps, was texting as many as 20 other guys and sending them naked pictures. All of them were taken while I was at home, either in another room or sleeping. The next 30 minutes were her sitting in silence and me packing my stuff to go to a hotel for the weekend. And then the following few weeks were spent with her telling me it was all my fault. We're not together anymore, clearly. I cracked the plaster on the wall with the back of my head. She said she was sorry, so sorry, that she didn't want it to end things between us. I told her to leave. She eventually did. That was the first time we broke up. Strangely, the others weren't as bad because I had already been through it. Still bad, but the final straw made it very easy to walk away. I worked for a few months, saved everything I could, then moved across the country. The last text I got from her was, "Where are you? We need to talk. I'm coming over. Everyone's telling me you moved, but I know they're lying. I never have snappy comebacks and I never get revenge. But tapping the word California into my cheapy Nokia and then sending it from the sunny streets of Venice to the icy winter frozen wasteland of Minnesota is one of the best feelings I've ever had after being hurt. It all started to get better from there. She married an idiot knuckle-dragging caveman misogynist. She saw me on a TV show once and sent me a picture of herself in an effort to smooth things over. Time had not been kind. When you're done, you can meet me at the park. I sat there with the six-pack waiting for him. Go on. I literally caught him with her on top in our bed. Anyways, so I waited as he showed up with already a few cold ones consumed. Discussed about how long it had been going on and that I was moving out, and he could keep the bed. He's actually one of my good friends still after 15 years. I just hate drama, so it's better to walk away. Sorry it's not a more exciting story.
Managers. What was the worst case of, "I demand to speak to the manager," that you've ever experienced? I told a customer buying makeup what products she should use on her deeper skin tone, and I'm now racist because I don't want her looking dead at the club. I worked in a high-end makeup store in Manhattan. We saw all kinds of people with all kinds of complexions and concerns, and you learned pretty fast what words work best to cushion the blow for some of the stuff. For example, texture instead of wrinkles, deeper or richer instead of darker. One thing that's always fun to have to explain is what flashback is. On deeper skin tones, a lot of setting powders will catch the light when a flash photo is taken. It'll basically make the person look like they have baby powder on their face, or make them look grey. It's super embarrassing and sort of immediately tells the world that you don't know how to use your makeup. Also, all your photos from your event or night out are ruined, so it's pretty sucky all around. Side note, I'm blonde and I use the Big C mixed with white out as a bronzer. I'm really white. For those of you confused, the Big C is an illegal substance that I can't use the real name of in this YouTube video. I was talking to a customer who had amazing, super deep skin. She was really cool and I was talking to her like a regular human being, and she was looking for a setting powder. Her friend was with her who likes honey beige, so pretty light. She was trying to get her to buy a translucent, which translates to white people and white people who are tan. When I asked her how she is going to use it, she had planned to bake, makeup baking, with it, and that cuts out like 80% of the setting powders we had. This was a couple of years ago, so we didn't have all that many medium-deep appropriate setting powders yet. I explained to her what flashback was, and I told her she could set her makeup with a powder foundation or either of those two setting powders. I told her that her friends might really like some of the other one and tell you to buy it, but with your beautiful skin, you kind of have to use different products. I then said that at some point the makeup industry will realize that there is an entire continent that also needs to set their makeup, but apparently we're not there yet. The customer laughed, she picked up one of the things I was showing her, and said, "Thank you," in the, "You're so kind, I'm so happy I found you today," kind of sing-song tone. Some other customer overheard some of this conversation and told my manager I was telling a customer that we didn't serve people like her. She was apparently yelling at my manager about how racist I was. I was so comfortable in this conversation with my equal that at some point I had said dark skin instead of deeper skin tones. This is apparently a huge insult to some people. It wasn't, however, to the woman living in her deeper skin tone skin looking for some damn setting powder. The woman who complained was a white lady. I was furious. Not only because this random woman overheard something that made me look racist, I was mad because I'm white and color theory and oxidation, a lot of deep shades that look great when you first swatch, but turn orange in an hour or so, for deeper skin tones is a lot more complicated, in my opinion, than for white folks. It took me years to understand the differences in tone and shade and how the products oxidize. It took me just as long to learn how to tell a black woman that 80% of what we sell here isn't going to work for you and have her leave happy, confident, and not disappointed. At Red Lobster, someone grabbed the manager and told him his shrimp was cold, wanted a free beer, and he could get better fish by fishing. This manager was my dad and was meeting us after work and apparently looked like an authority figure since he had a tie on. My dad replied, "That's cocktail shrimp, you moron." I recently had an experience where I was at a restaurant having a meeting for my volunteer work, and a guy mistook me for their waitress. I was walking back from the bathroom when he very obnoxiously huffed and yelled from a distance at me, "Excuse me, can we please get some more silverware?" I just stared at him for a good 10 seconds, dumbfounded because of his tone, before saying, "I don't work here." He immediately turned bright red and his demeanor went back to talking to me like a human. Maybe he had been waiting a long time for silverware, but I couldn't help but feel bad for his actual waitress. No idea why, I have a distinct look that didn't fit in with the waiters or waitresses, and I was wearing a t-shirt with my alma mater on it, while the servers were in black button-ups. Worked for a passenger railroad in Cincinnati, 23, male, wear reflective high-vis shirt and pants. We have to run ahead of our dinner train and flag each crossing, stopping traffic due to a ridiculous rule set by the railroad we run on. Mind you, we go 7 to 10 miles per hour, fairly easy to keep up with. Saturday, I drive up to a crossing with the lights flashing already and start flagging cars across since the train is at least 1 minute away. Middle-aged man drives up to me, stops before the crossing, I wave harder at him to come through, He speeds up beside me and stops on the crossing. I don't know you're with the railroad. You could just be some yahoo. What? Okay, sir, continue on. The train is right there. Why should I listen to some young kid like you? Because if you don't, you're getting hit by the freaking train. Now move. I'll be speaking with your manager. As he drives off, I get teed off and throw a flag on the ground. An hour later, I'm back as the train goes the other way. My general manager, 23, male, 6 foot tall, is standing with me helping protect the crossing. Man returns, yells at him, "Who's your manager? I'd like to report him for being a butthole." Boss looks at me, turns to him and says, "I am. Now get the frick off my railroad." Guy gently drives away. In conclusion, older man stops on railroad tracks, is butthole, manager is the bigger, better butthole. As a mild-mannered Northern European, I've always been thankful for when I've had a bigger, meaner person on my side at the workplace whenever I've been browbeaten by a customer. I work in the admissions department at a zoo. We work closely with the membership department and are really friendly with each other. When people purchase membership, they get a card that says their name, how many adults, how many children, if they're allowed to bring in a guest, etc. The card says clearly that you must show ID per card. Sometimes we're friendly or lazy and ask for one ID for the whole group. Well, a week ago, some guy didn't have his ID. I don't know how he drove to the zoo since you need a form of ID to drive, and we told him that without an ID, we can't let him in. The guy got mad and started screaming at us, saying random crap to us. He demanded to see a manager. Good thing our manager, for admission not membership, was on site. She explained to the guy that without ID we can't let him go in, showed him on the card where it explains to show ID. The guy screams at her and says that because he paid for the membership, he should be allowed to go in without an ID. My manager responded, "No ID, no entry." He asked to see a manager. Her response was, "I am the manager." He then asks if there was someone higher up that he could speak to. She told him, "If you want to do anything, you'll have to speak with membership." So he goes to membership and they told us he was being a butthole and screaming that he paid for it and blah blah blah. The manager for membership was called and because he screamed at him, they denied his entry to the zoo. I worked at an independent chocolate shop that sold various flavors of truffles, brownies, and drinks. We had non-dairy options, vegan options, and nut-free options. A woman demanded to speak with the manager because we did not have any dairy-free, nut-free, sugar-free vegan options. Luckily, the owner literally just laughed and said, "We do have one. It's called water." I have never seen such entitled rage. If said shop happened to be in a weird yuppie or foodie type of area, I bet they could make carob goods for nut jobs like this woman. Fake chocolate with fake sugar and charge considerably more than normal for it because it's specialty. Even if they tasted fricking horrible, fad dieters would buy them up in a heartbeat. What in Thor's name does that girl eat if she can't eat dairy, nuts, sugar, and has to keep vegan? I worked the customer service desk at a grocery store. One afternoon, a guy came storming over after getting checked out and threw a package of beef in front of me. He starts going off, yelling and cussing at me because he was supposed to get a $3.54 discount, but the register only took off $3.53. He was screaming at me that he wanted his penny back and that it wasn't even about the penny, but the principle of the thing. By the time he was through, he had yelled at me, my customer service manager, and our store manager on duty. As soon as I gave him that penny, though, he shut right up and left. Principle of the thing, I guess. I was a shift lead at a GameStop and was the manager on duty with one other associate in the store. We were pretty busy, both the other employee and I were on registers, ringing through our respective lines. Poor guy I work with gets this soccer mum haircut that I knew was going to be trouble, and she's trying to return a new game that had the seal broken on it. Against return policy, can't help you. So lady then gets really upset and demands to cancel all of her son's pre-orders. My guy obliges and is preparing to give her refund and store credit because her son had only paid for the pre-orders with trades. You can't match tenders, so my guy informed her so. That was just it. She was instantly screaming and calling my associate a liar. He literally turns the computer screen towards her and shows her the entries in trade credit, but she isn't having it. "Let me speak to your manager." Dude points to me, I wrap up with my customer, and we trade registers so he can keep helping out. I ask her how I can help, to which she screams her experience at me. I reiterate what my buddy informed her, and that there isn't any way that we can get her cash back. She claims, "Well, I'm gonna call your corporate office and tell them that your policy doesn't apply to me. I've never been treated like this before." To which I happily offer her the corporate number and advise her that telling a corporate customer service line that they believe they are exempt from policy is probably not the best strategy. Woman gets red in the face and starts looking around the store, and God forbid the poor man, the old manager, walks in. He does not work there anymore, but the woman recognizes him from his time at the store. She begins to accuse me of lying to her because she knows that he is the real manager and that he can be of help to her. Nope, dude is just trying to stop. She ended up just leaving in a huff. There is a fairly well-used GIF of Homer Simpson shrinking into a hedge. I choose to believe that the old manager did this into the shelves of GameStop when he heard the conversation. Yikes. Worked front desk of a hotel. Had a woman throw a gosh darn tantrum because the state we were in charged a 6% room tax. She demanded that I remove the tax. I told her that we had no control over taxes. She still wouldn't accept the reality of taxes, so I printed off the contact information on her state representative and told her to direct her complaints to them. She did not like that at all. She started screaming, so I got my manager. My manager said basically what I said, that we cannot legally remove a tax. So the woman grabbed the bowl of mince from the counter and threw it at my head and stormed out. We had her credit card on file and charged her for the full amount. I had a regular repeat guest get upset because the room she normally stayed in was booked prior to her check-in and wouldn't be free for a few days. I apologized and promised her the room once it opened up. She got really angry and started demanding that I make the guest that had been in the room for a few days move because that room was her room. I continued apologizing and telling her that she'd get it in a few days. She asked to speak to my manager and yelled at my manager that just because I was pretty didn't mean that I knew what I was talking about and I should be let go. My manager ended up giving the guest the same information I had given her and telling the guest that I wouldn't be fired as I had excellent customer service skills. Weirdest complaint, insult, compliment ever. I had a woman call in to tell me that she had spent too little on an ice cream cone. We had a special that was like 2 scoops and a waffle cone for $5, and for some reason she only got 1 scoop and said she didn't know about the special, despite there being signs all over the shop about it. She claimed that my worker didn't offer it to her. I didn't focus on upselling at the store, so this wasn't a big deal to me. I apologized to her, but was also like, what exactly do you want me to do about it? This happened yesterday. I'm assuming you ate the ice cream, so you can't return it. She wanted a refund anyway for the inconvenience. I asked if she had a receipt. She said she didn't. I said, no go without a receipt. She said she didn't get one at checkout. I explained to her that in my state we're not required by law to give a receipt for cash-purchased food service items. So if she didn't ask for one, tough. She kept pressing, saying she demanded to speak to the manager. I explained I was the manager. She then asked if there was another manager she could speak to. I told her no. I was end of the line, top of the heap. No one else was going to tell her anything different. She huffed and told me she would be by to discuss it in person. She never came in. These stories are giving me flashbacks of all the times people asked for the corporate number, because that happened to me all the time at the car wash I used to run. I was it, top of the line. The owners cared about the company but didn't give a rat's butt about customer complaints. They were told to never give out information about them. Not numbers, not names, not any other businesses they owned, nothing. So when you got some B-word yelling and screaming at you because you're following company policy to not rewash a $3 car wash and she wants corporate's number, you get to tell her that you are as high as it goes, there is no corporate. Well, do you own it then? And I couldn't lie. Nope, I'd tell her. Then get me the owner's number. They'd always act so smug, like they said the magic words to open a secret cave door. Sorry, but they prefer to remain private. They've trusted me to run this location, to do the hiring and firing, to process the payroll, to order parts and supplies, to deal with the insurance company, to repair broken equipment, and to deal with any and all customer issues and complaints. It'd either end here with them insisting that they would find the owner's information and have me fired because I followed the owner's instructions, or they'd yell and I would call the cops. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks. God, that was an awful time. Obligatory not a manager but. Maybe not the worst, but this was definitely the dumbest I've ever seen. A sign was accidentally left up from earlier in the week advertising men's Levi's as buy one, get one half off. So for 2 pairs it would be roughly $90. The current sale was to get 2 pairs for $70. Had a lady pitch an absolute fit that they weren't ringing up to buy one, get one half off, she was being ripped off, etc. Tried and tried to explain to her that we had accidentally missed a sign, but she was actually getting a better deal at the current price. She wouldn't have any of it and demanded to speak to the manager. Store leader comes out and tells her the exact same thing, but the lady will not listen and is adamant about getting them at the price on the sign. Store leader finally gives up and tells me to just go ahead and do a price override and charge her the extra money. Lady leaves smugly, like she thinks she's just worked us over big time, and makes some kind of comment about how I need to learn to listen to customers on the way out. In conclusion, the lady spent an extra $20 on jeans because she wanted them for the price on an old sign. There's a saying from somewhere that I remember in this instance: people would rather be right than be happy. I guess the victory of this situation gave this person the satisfaction she was missing from her bland and terrible life. When I worked at Starbucks, we, as you can imagine, had plenty of crappy entitled people come in expecting the world of employees, barely paid above minimum wage, who've been awake since 3 a.m. or earlier. We had people blaming us for the fact that they were late for work and were going to be fired. People blaming us for being late picking up their kids blaming us for being late to school. Plenty of, "But I ordered a venti, why did you give me a grande?" Or, "This coffee is cold because I've left it sitting out for an hour, but I want you to make me a new one for free." Or, "You aren't being enthusiastic enough after 8 hours of being here and so sleep-deprived you don't know what your name is." But the worst/funniest was Libby. Libby was a regular who we really wished wasn't. She was overly demanding and had one of those super complicated, half-calf, double soy, triple whip, hold the cream, half the sugar, do a backflip when you serve me types. And she could tell if you got her order wrong and would make you remake it until it was right. She would also steal from our tip jar right in front of our faces. She'd pretend to put a 5 in and then pull out 4 ones, but she'd take out 5 or 6 ones instead. And one time during this little switcheroo of hers, she accidentally dropped a $100 bill out of her wallet. The good thing about Libby was that she only came in once or twice a week, but that meant that we were the ones who had to find this $100 bill for her. She didn't notice it for a few hours afterwards, and when she did, she called in and asked for the manager, and asked her if she had seen it. Since she would have dropped it out in the lobby, where we very rarely went since we were so busy in BOH, we went out to check but found nothing and told her that a customer must have taken it, and that we were sorry, but there was nothing she could do. She flipped her crap. "That's my rent money. I'm going to be kicked out of my house. Do you want me to be homeless? You hate me and want me to be homeless, you crappy effers? I hate you, and you're terrible. Go frick off and die." The supervisor came out and gave me the gist of what she'd said while begging me to find this money. There were also some racist accusations since the neighborhood of this Starbucks was predominantly immigrants, and Libby was your standard white liberal until put under pressure. Anyway, so a week passes and still the money hasn't shown up. Libby calls us each day, multiple times a day, to find out if we found her money. Sometimes she yells and screams, sometimes she doesn't. Either way, the answer's always the same: we haven't found her money. So she comes in again and pretends like she hasn't been cussing us out for a week straight, is all happy and bubbly and jokes about losing the money and how she's just so scatterbrained sometimes, haha. She tries to talk me into giving her a free coffee since we lost her money, but I tell her that she has to pay anyway. She grumbles and opens up her wallet, pulls out her card, and out flutters a $100 bill and lands on the counter. We both look at it. She looks into her wallet and after a moment goes, "Oh, that's right. I hid $100 in my credit card slot for safekeeping so I wouldn't lose it. You can stop looking for my money now." That was it. No apologies for the abuse throughout the week, the accusations, anything. I know I shouldn't expect one, but darn, I think she realized that she fricked up though, because she didn't show back up for a couple of weeks. In conclusion, she thought we stole her money after she stole our money, later found her money in her wallet safe and sound. I was busy at Christmas at an old job sorting out wrapping paper, etc. The queue got large, so I jumped on the till. A customer approached and complained about having to pay 5 pence for a plastic bag. The charge just started. She said she wasn't going to pay, so I charged her and asked for the next customer. She moaned that she wouldn't be able to carry everything. I asked for 5 pence. She asked to speak to my supervisor. I said I'll go get him. I left the tills, turned a corner, waited a few seconds, and reappeared, informing her that I was in charge. I once had a customer buy $80 worth of cheap black t-shirts, then complain about the 10-cent per bag charge. What a ripoff! This is ridiculous! Okay, have fun carrying a stack of shirts to your car, you penny-pinching jackass. I was the VP of sales for an F500 here in the States. At about 6:30 p.m., my office phone rang and it was a person from HR asking if I could take a call in which the client was irate and threatening legal action. I get on the phone and quickly realize there is zero chance of making this man happy. And ironically, I'm a big fan of firing crappy clients. The things he was demanding was simply ridiculous and I politely refused. I also stated that I would personally allow his company out from its contract with no fees or costs. Of course, still not good enough. I eventually hung up due to the screaming and foul language. Long story short, I found out the next day he was arrested for trespassing that evening, while trying to enter our corporate suburban office with 2 guns. But the joke was on him because I worked in our corporate downtown office. I used to work at the concession stand/cafe at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. We had snacks like potato chips and candy, as well as pre-made sandwiches from a local sandwich shop. We only got a certain number of sandwiches for each day, so when we ran out, that was it. This one lady, who was in a wheelchair, came through my line telling me how she was diabetic and needed to eat a meal. I showed her that we had trail mix, candy, and chips, but she absolutely could not eat any of that because she was diabetic. It had to be a sandwich and nothing else. I told her we literally didn't have any sandwiches left, but she just kept repeating about how she was diabetic, and she told me there would be sandwiches. She was being incredibly rude to me, making a scene, and said, "I was told there would be sandwiches," probably about 10 times. By this point, there was a long line forming behind her while she was making a scene. She asked for the manager, so I told her she could step out of line and wait for the manager, but she wouldn't budge. The manager came over and told her the exact thing that I had. She eventually calmed down, moved out of the line, and agreed to have chips and candy. For free. I don't know who the frick told her about the sandwiches, but I want to slap them.
What words or phrases do you hear someone say and immediately know you're probably not gonna like that person? Tough love often seems to be used as an excuse to be a jerk. I get it when it's like an intervention, but most times I've personally heard this is just for when people want to start crap. So I personally don't use the term tough love, but I am the doesn't sugarcoat things friend. Granted, I know how to read a room, and I'm not heartless, but there are a bunch of people in this world that need a little push or to be told that they are acting a certain way that might not be for the best. I feel like tough love is probably the best phrase, but I don't know another phrase that doesn't seem negative. You're so quiet. No, I'm not quiet or shy, I just don't want to speak to you. We're all family here. In a work setting, mother freaker, you just laid off cousin Bill last week. Yeah, as soon as you start talking to your coworkers like you talk to your brother, you get written up. Can you go get the cart from the back in building C? Get crapped on, poophead. You've got legs. Instant write-up. So much for family. No offense, but just before saying the most offensive thing you've heard in your life. See, also, don't take this the wrong way, with a disaster statement to follow. That's the cousin of, I'm not racist, but proceeds to say the most racist thing you've ever heard. Can't forget stepsister of, not to be political, but you can't retort it because they made it clear that their political rant wasn't political. This family usually calls Twitter home. People don't like me because I tell it like it is. And naturally, they hate when anyone else dares to tell them how it is in kind. Very thin-skinned these blunt folks are. My ex. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Also my ex would quietly simmer about things he secretly had an issue with for months, make snarky remarks out of nowhere, and then it would be like pulling teeth to get him to have a solid conversation about what the freak was even up with him. Turned out to be a shady mofo who would rather burn everything to the ground and start over with a whole new friend group than actually admitting to someone that he was in the wrong. I'm so bipolar. To explain why they are indecisive, or to play off poor life choices, or just to say it to sound quirky. I really hate that because I'm bipolar and I rarely tell anyone. I hate this for, I'm so OCD, too. Yeah, definitely. My colleagues say this all the time and it's really annoying. I actually have OCD and it's a horrible condition that limits your life so much and it gives you so much stress and anxiety. Another one that makes me roll my eyes is, I'm so weird. People seem to like to use those kinds of words to make them seem special or cool. Whatever. I'd like to add in here the phrase, I'm dyslexic. For people that do something by mistake or switch something around that they didn't mean to, that's not dyslexia. You just messed up. Call me when you have to proofread a tweet or text message a million times and the moment you hit send, you notice mistakes. I'm bipolar and I hate it when people use it as a badge of quirkiness. Nobody brags about climbing the walls at 3 a.m. Nobody should aspire to burning their life down. Nobody can throw away every relationship, career, education, and think it's something to be proud of. Because of these people, my own tendencies get blown off and not taken seriously. I'm so glad I found medication that works. I hate the way I used to be. Absolutely hate it. One of my best friends is bipolar. I was roommates with the guy for 3 years. Regular people simply don't know crap about how significant the ups and downs are. And they usually aren't mentally prepared when I start giving examples of the crazy crap I put up with. Some of them immediately question how I put up with him or why I didn't bail. He and I are still besties, and I love telling all those idiot normies that they simply aren't as strong for their friends as they think they are. I'm super happy that you've got a decent medication plan. My friend finally found something that works this past year, and instead of waking up thinking, I wanna die, or messaging all of his Discord friends at 5 a.m. to see if anybody is still awake, he just goes to work feeling like a human, and he goes to bed early just because he wants to. But seriously, congrats on finding something that works. I've seen how it changes somebody, so I'll cheer you on too. I do want to say I take a little issue with the comment that said people are idiot normies because they wouldn't stick around for their bipolar friends. I do think people should be commended for supporting their friends in positive ways. That's always great. But I dated a girl that was bipolar and it was ruining my life. And I stuck around for 5 years. In my case, they tried medication, but they didn't like how they felt on it and went back to life without it. So I have to say there is a limit to how much people should have to quote unquote support their friends. It shouldn't come at the cost of your own happiness. I hate drama. I have never heard someone say this unsolicited and not been exhausted with their shenanigans within a day. Those of us who really hate drama feel no need to announce it. We just quietly try to bail out of situations without getting noticed and drug back into it against our will. Someone who describes themselves as an alpha male tells impulsive stories about how tough he is and how many women he's banged. Yeah, me and you are gonna fall out real soon, buddy. And I'm not just saying this because he's an ex, loser ex-BF said this all the time. Then later, when I broke it off and ignored him, his messages were things along the lines of, you think you're an alpha female? But you're not even close. You can't compete with me and what I bring. Ugh, I hated that guy so much. I didn't believe it until I had a roommate call himself one. And he was serious about it. Considered himself a global nomad, does nothing but look at stocks and crypto every day, only wore tank tops, had a man bun, believed himself to be a natural leader and kept trying to force himself as the leader of the house. Eventually he got into a fight with my roommate because the alpha kept insulting his parents. When I told them to fight, my roommate pushed him. The alpha called the cops because he touched me first. The cops laughed in his face. But it wasn't fun being questioned by the cops at 10 p.m. Dude, can I just say that if a guy constantly talks about how much he hooked up with chicks, they more than likely are not doing that. I used to work with some dudes that were like this, and all of these stories happened when there were no witnesses, and if they ever went out with coworkers, they were often quiet and kept to themselves. Also, the hookup situations always seem like something you could find on Orange and Black YouTube. Where's my hug? Immediately, no. As an empath, that or I'm an old soul. I like people who are spiritual, but these particular people seem to be less spiritual and more full of themselves most of the time. Good vibes only. And I'm such an empath. Okay, I've totally met people that say I'm an old soul or that they like good vibes only. I have never in my life met somebody that has considered themselves an empath. Is that really a thing? Why didn't they just take eagles to Mordor? I feel like this one doesn't get used much outside of nerd circles. Oh, I'm totally compelled to do this totally normal activity because my OCD, ADHD, bipolar is kicking in. This is absolutely not how ADHD works. Everyone seems to have it. It's annoying. I hate that I found out that I have ADHD in a time where everyone thinks that they have ADHD. It is a huge light bulb moment for me. Like, oh crap, this is why my life has always been so hard for me. And I felt like such an outsider / weirdo. But now it's trendy to say that you have ADHD, even though when you really have it, it just sucks. I do find it funny when people think that they have ADHD and they use it as an excuse. When I hear somebody say that, I usually ask, were you diagnosed? And if they say no, I just tell them, you're probably just bad with time management. You'd be surprised how much people could get done if they actually scheduled things out. Those type of people that say, I got this shirt for X amount and these shoes for Y amount. You pay way more than normal people for stuff. That's not something to brag about. Also, do you really have no innate worth that you have to toss around price tags to attract people? To be honest, I throw around amounts sometimes, but in the opposite, usually to boast about how cheap something was. When someone compliments my jacket, oh my god, it was on clearance for 20 bucks, thanks. Both sides of this coin can be really annoying, but it's harmless if you just do it from time to time. Women who say, I only have guy friends, which is usually followed by something like, women always bring drama, women are usually jerks, women can't handle how real I am, women are always jealous of me. Yeah, it's great to have guy friends, but the problem is when women who view other women as the enemy. Oh my god, I hate this one too. Girl, when you're having problems with all the other women, you're the problem. I have to say 100% yes to this. We've done a red flag video here on the Genius channel before, and I don't think this was brought up, but when women don't have female friends and say the reasoning are some of the above, it's definitely a sign of trouble from my experience. But to be fair, there were a few comments that countered against this idea, and they went like this. I feel like where I was raised in the 80s and 90s, it was common practice to pit girls against girls. I grew up with one other girl as a friend, and she was a huge tomboy like myself. All my other friends were dudes. Okay, fine. They were good people, but as an almost 40-year-old woman, I love and cherish my women friends, and have almost no close male friends anymore. I feel like I was robbed of female friendship as a child due to my parents, and other adults making me think I hated other girls from the get-go. I just want to add, everyone who says that dudes don't like drama are full of crap. Men love drama. If they say most or all of their friends are guys because they grew up with brothers and are more comfortable around guys, or that they can't find any girlfriends that want to do the same activities as them, it's totally understandable. But to say women are too much drama or jealous or can't handle them is just annoying. Sincerely, I'm a girl that has a bunch of guy friends, which is fine, but I like to do typical male activities. But I also wish I had more women friends because sometimes guys just don't get it. And sometimes I just want a girls' night. Just to back up the comment of men liking drama, it's 100% true. I used to work at an old auto factory, and gossip spread faster than COVID in that place. The factory was like 80% dudes. My truth. As the way my philosophy professor put it when a girl asked, I'm just speaking my truth. I could believe the moon is made of blue cheese and say that's my truth, but that doesn't make it true. Get over yourself. I think I would have loved this professor. Reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that I believe comes from Ricky Gervais, and it said something along the lines of, just because you're offended doesn't make you right. And I feel like that statement is becoming truer and truer by the day. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Yeah, this is basically code for saying you're a horrible person. When they start bragging about themselves when you first meet them. You know what your problem is, don't you? Oh, that's such typical star sign behavior. Every horoscope is a Rorschach test. People will see whatever they want to see. I can read every horoscope and find something that applies to me all the time. Horoscopes are stupid. That's such an Aries thing to say. Engagement, initiative, any kind of group speak that sounds like the corporate marketing manager plagiarized. I can't comment on corporate speak, but people that use big words just to sound more intelligent, we get it, Brad, you can read a dictionary. I'm an influencer and I have X amount of followers. I will say this statement is worse when they're just starting out. Yeah, I just started, but I know what it takes to become famous, so in a few months, these numbers are gonna be insane. Just watch. My ex was a narcissist. I didn't hear this nearly as often until the last year or so. Now suddenly everyone has an ex that's a narcissist. I work in the behavioral health field, and this one drives me crazy. No, just because you both wanted different things in life doesn't make him selfish enough to be labeled with an actual personality disorder. Oh my god. Just say you weren't compatible and move on with your life. No offense to those who actually genuinely dated a narcissist. People can just be genuinely sucky, awful, self-absorbed, and even abusive, but still not be a narcissist. People don't have to have a personality disorder to suck. That last sentence is vastly underrated. Anyone older who says, back in my day, you young people don't know what hard work is. Anything like that, as if they couldn't buy a house on minimum wage and go to college without crippling debt. I personally graduated debt-free thanks to scholarships, but the older generation seems to not understand the wage/cost disparity between their generation and the younger generations. As I'm older now, I understand that everyone will end up saying, "Back in my day," or "the younger generation," because it's the best way to describe something in comparison. It isn't always negative, and a lot of statements are truthful, such as, "Back in my day, people didn't come out as gay in high school because they feared what people might think or say." Or, "The younger generation will never understand the amount of effort that went into a research paper before the internet." Yes, but you know others have it worse. Every time you have an issue, denying the pain of someone isn't helping them at all. Yes, others have it worse. But at day D, hour H, I want to talk about my feelings and feel heard and seen. I want solutions, or I want help, or I want someone to complain about said subject or sensitive topic for me. It's not being selfish, it's just de-stressing. And if you can't find a solution, at least keep the bad vibes away. I had this new coworker who I didn't have to work with, but could have made both of our jobs easier. He didn't even need to say anything. At the first morning meeting, he had a Daily Wire coffee mug that said, "This cup is filled with liberal tears." Yeah, no thanks, dude. I don't need your help with anything. Anything involving crystal healing, essential oils doing more than just smelling nice, or projecting one's dreams into reality. I forget the exact term for the third thing at this moment. If any one of these things comes up in conversation and you're being serious about it, I automatically don't trust you completely. If multiple are a part of your personality, I don't trust you at all. Is the third thing speaking stuff into existence? Is that what they meant? Anyone that badmouths others. My initial thought immediately jumps to, what are you gonna say about me when I'm not around? Everything happens for a reason. Nah, that's some bullcrap platitude that you tell yourself because thinking the world operates on logic and reason is a coping mechanism for avoiding the reality that the world is unfair, unpredictable, and bad things happen to good people all the time. People who will insert, "Well, if Trump was still in office," in every single conversation despite having nothing to do with politics. Oh, I just thought of another one. People who say, "Well, just wait until some blue-haired person comes by and complains about what we're doing," when they are trying to defend something that they do or are into. Most of the time, it's projection and it doesn't even make sense with the particular subject matter. Men are logical and analytical, and women are emotional. That's one of the most inaccurate statements I keep hearing every time I listen to a certain type of people on certain videos or podcasts. Anyone using words like literally, toxic, or problematic in every other sentence, it's like these words have lost all meaning. Regardless, or it is what it is. Guilty of it is what it is. I'm not saying I don't care. To be fair, sometimes I don't care. But more that you need to keep perspective in what you have control over in your life and what you don't. I have a few coworkers that are habitual complainers, to the point that I believe it may just be their natural state. Why the freak are you complaining to me because Taco Bell was out of Baja Blast 8 hours ago, before you came to work and now your day's ruined? They didn't have it. Get something else. It is what it is. It boggles my mind people can function in their day-to-day life by personalizing every externality and bringing themselves to near cathartic rage about them. Any talk of Biden crime family, Hunter laptop, CRT, they put litter boxes in schools for kids that identify as cats, them teachers are indoctrinating kids, mentions of Newsmax, OAN, or Tucker freaking Carlson, or blaming Democrats for every poor choice they made in life. I'm not racist, but went on a date with a random woman from Bumble, and no more than 5 minutes into the convo, she started a sentence with this, then spewed something incredibly racist. There is no way to end that sentence and not have it be awful. Paid the bills for the drinks and apps that hadn't even arrived yet and made a beeline to the door to nope my way out of there. If she bleeds, she breeds. Don't forget, oh look, now you're breedable too. Well, the Bible says, followed by some incredibly arrogant thoughts. Anyone who says, I have haters, or any variant of that. Anything derogatory regarding or referencing a group you're not a part of tells me all I need to know about what you think of yourself and others. Work hard, play hard. As a straight, white, cisgender person, ma'am, this is a Wendy's? Thoughts and prayers. Tells me they put on an empathic face while doing absolutely nothing to help, regardless of their ability to do so. virtue signaling at its finest. Anything MAGA, using the term woke to describe people they don't like, and preaching/missioning about any religion, and I'm out. I'm sure you're a fine person, but I only have 20 to 30 years of my life. I don't want to spend it conversing with idiots and self-righteous voices that believe in that. I'm not sure what happened here, but there was a huge pocket of things that were intertwinable and relatable all in that little section. The one thing I will say though is if woke is part of your everyday vocabulary, yeah, my brain is probably gonna turn off when talking to you. You'd be prettier if you just smiled. Relax, bro, it's just a joke. After saying something incredibly inappropriate or offensive. Specifically, anyone who refers to COVID as the Rona. I hate you. I'm a real patriot. Most people who use this phrase never served their country in any capacity to make it better. That means not necessarily military, but other jobs that help the country as well. And they think for some reason because they are extremely right-leaning, probably love the orange one and have lots of guns, it makes them a patriot. I served in the military, then when I got out, I tried to keep jobs that help my community/country in some way. And I feel like a true patriot is not a person looking for violence or to hate others, but a person who wants us to all succeed, even people who are immigrants that may not be an official citizen yet. And for us all to work together as a country to improve the lives of everyone that lives here. To me, that's a true patriot. I got one that I didn't see on the list. When gamers say, people nowadays would never survive in the old Call of Duty lobbies. People that say this are usually some of the softest people in the world. Just look at any big YouTuber or Twitch streamer that plays COD religiously.
Doctors of Reddit, what was your dumbest r/I am very smart patient experience? RN here. I see some crazy stuff, but one thing that stands out was the time I was admitting a guy to the hospital. I can't really remember what for, but he was about 400 pounds, diabetic, heart disease, you name it. Anyhow, I'm at the computer going over some admission questions with him and his 10 family members who are crowded in the room with him. A few minutes in, he starts complaining that he's thirsty. He needs something to drink right now. So I get on my phone and call the nurse assistant and ask her to bring in some ice water. As soon as the words are out of my mouth, the whole family screams, "No! No water! He's allergic to water!" Well, this is gonna be a problem. Turns out the guy had been drinking nothing but Sprite and sweet tea for years because of his water allergy. The next question the wife had was, where are we all supposed to sleep? The whole family, 10 people, were planning to stay at the hospital with him. You can't make this stuff up. Was working at a clinic. I was speaking with a non-controlled diabetic patient about her sugar intake, and she says she drinks a 32-ounce soda every day. I ask her if it's regular or diet, and she replies with, it's half regular. I let the ice melt first so there isn't as much sugar in it. Sorry, but that isn't how it works. I had a patient who was a completely non-compliant diabetic, smoker, morbidly obese, who had his first heart attack at 45. His blood pressure was also super high. And instead of taking his anti-hypertensive medications, he went to the gym. In the gym, he would sit in the sauna for a very long time, and sweat a lot, and lower his blood pressure by becoming dehydrated. Amazing. I bet he wouldn't listen to a dang thing you said either, because it did technically lower his blood pressure. I have one. I got this from my friend, who is a doctor on the children's ward in a rural hospital. These parents bring in their child whose hair is infested with lice. The lice was visible to the naked eye and could be seen crawling on the child's clothing. While the medical staff examined the child in order to determine a course of action, they discovered the child was covered in a white powder and smelled heavily of chemicals. They asked the parents what were the substances and the smells emanating from the child. The parents said, quite matter of fact, it was 7 powder and the flea and tick spray they used on their dogs on the family's farm. Needless to say, social workers were notified about this case. 70-year-old female tripped and fell 2 days ago. She came in with hip pain, but reports after the fall her nose was bleeding. She had landed on her nose. About a year prior, her dentist had messed up an infraorbital nerve block and caused some swelling in that region, but that was all resolved. This old lady is now convinced her nosebleed after falling on her face is related to an infection from the dental issue a year ago. After multiple back and forth on the etiology of the nosebleed, she became the first patient I raised my voice and put down an authoritative, "No, you are wrong, just stop it." This has got to be the medical equivalent to, the update you installed on the computer a year ago is making it run funny. Get over here and fix it. I work for an optometrist, and it was the month before school started, and a woman brought in her son to have his eyes checked for the first time. Seems like a reasonable thing for any parent, even he was a little older than usual for a first eye exam. Better late than never, I guess. The mom was well-spoken and appeared fairly intelligent. Everything went as normal, the doctor examined the boy, and ended up prescribing glasses. When the doctor was explaining to the mom that her son had to wear his glasses all the time since he's nearsighted and basically can't see clearly past 5 feet in front of him, and will definitely need glasses for school. For some reason, this caused a switch to flip in the mom, and she spazzed out on the doctor, saying that her son doesn't need glasses and that the doctor is only saying that he does because he wants to sell glasses. She says that she only brought her son in because there was some form for school that needed to be filled out and that doctors are all con artists trying to push unnecessary medications and interventions. The doctor tried to calm her down and explain that he's only trying to help them, but that she was free to get a second opinion, and gave her a copy of the kid's prescription and sent them on their way. About 4 months later, the lady is back asking for another copy of her son's prescription. Apparently, the first semester midterm results were in, and her son failed them all because he couldn't see the board in his classes and needs glasses. Any variation of this, which I get all the freaking time. Me. So how are things going with your diabetes? I don't have diabetes. Then why are you taking metformin and Victoza and whatever? I used to have diabetes. Then replace diabetes with hypertension/antihypertensives, etc. Or when I ask them what medical diagnosis they have, and they say none while taking a ton of meds. Or when they misname a funny part, prostrate, tendant, uterus, to name a few. Do you take any medications? No. Are you supposed to take any medications? Yes. What for, and do you know what they are? No. Do you think this chest pain could be because of the heart attack I had a few years ago? Well, gee, mister, it sure probably could be. Not a doctor, but I'm a nurse who worked in the OR at a trauma center. Was doing surgery on a 19-year-old who tested positive for meth and cocaine, who was grilling the anesthesiologist about every drug we were going to use in surgery because he didn't like putting chemicals in his body. Gotta stick with that organic, fair trade, non-GMO cocaine. Most of my own stories go along similar lines to patient has chest pain driving a coachload of school children, thinks it's indigestion, swigs bottle of Gaviscon, later diagnosed with a huge heart attack. My favorite ever story comes from a colleague. A patient comes into A&E with abdominal pain. As part of the workup, he gets an abdominal x-ray which shows the problem as clear as day. The colleague has then proceeded to remove, from the patient's rectum, an 8-inch replica of Nelson's Column, the statue in the center of Trafalgar Square, London. On showing it to the patient, the response was, "Oh, that's Nelson. He lives up there." He lives up there? You're just walking around with that in your butt 24/7? I've got 2 stories that stick out in my mind. The first is the mother of a toddler who came into emergency. The kid had cruddy green/bloody stuff coming out of his left nostril and a lot of redness and swelling of only the left side of his nose and the adjacent cheek. Mom was sure he caught a sinus infection and just wanted some antibiotics. Now, I know some kids like shoving whatever will fit into their body orifices, and that this was more than likely given the one-sided nature of his condition, but Mom was insistent that he never puts things in his nose. It took some convincing, but I finally got her to let me take a look. Gave a squirt of midazolam in the good nostril to settle him, then dug with some tweezers through the crud until I pulled out a big ol' button battery. It would have been burning his nose for a couple days. Hopefully he healed up well. Side note, if a kid swallows a button battery, it could do a similar thing to their esophagus. This is an emergency and needs to be dealt with ASAP. I actually sneezed after reading that. Patient had a hard time getting pregnant. Finally conceived but miscarried. Patient has a D&C so she can try again, this time with medical intervention. We monitor her blood to ensure the pregnancy hormone is gone before beginning treatment, but she keeps coming back with high levels of hormone. Docs are worried because she might have some retained placenta or pituitary disorder, and this could be super bad for future fertility. We call her in for a conversation about the hormone levels not going away. After talking together for what might be wrong, they are going to go home and think about further tests. She says, "I need to go. I have an appointment at the weight loss center for an HCG shot." Turns out that she is on the HCG diet. HCG is the pregnancy hormone, and this was after an hour of the doc saying, "We don't know why you have these constant high levels of HCG in your blood and we are worried." Patient inquiring about birth control was adamant she wanted an IED. Take cover! It's a boy! Had a young woman with recurring UTIs that began after a recent partner and with no STDs. Went through the standard questions trying to figure out what could be causing them and eventually found out she had been lubricating with jelly, not KY jelly. The mix-up had literally been a joke on House. It took me some effort to keep a straight face, but we eventually resolved the problem and she stopped getting UTIs. Oh, I have 2 good ones that come to mind. Clinical pharmacist here, by the way, with 1 story in the ER and 1 in the pharmacy. ER physician told me this one. 16-year-old boy presented to the ER with an extremely swollen, discolored woohoo Apparently, he had been using his mom's insulin needles to draw blood out of his arm and inject it into his own woohoo. He thought that adding blood would help increase his size. His woohoo was terribly infected and he was hospitalized for a week or so. One day in the pharmacy, a girl comes to the counter requesting a refill for her birth control. We pulled up her profile and realized we couldn't refill it because she just got a 28-day fill less than 2 weeks ago. When we asked what happened to the other one, she said she was out. Apparently, both her and her boyfriend were each taking a pill each and was adamant that was how they needed to prevent pregnancy. I can't fault her for being proactive, but I will say that she's doing too much. I'm a chorusman, not a doctor, but I once had a patient tell me that there was no credible research that smoking was bad for one's health. Okay. Optician here. We had a patient who refused to let us use the tonometer, a machine for checking ocular internal pressure to diagnose glaucoma. He said that puff machine gives you glaucoma and we weren't going to pull that on him. He told us his father got an exam and had glaucoma after using that machine. His uncle and brother also had no signs of glaucoma, and after getting the puff test, both people had been diagnosed with a disease. Glaucoma doesn't have any outward symptoms before you start going blind. This idiot just told me he has a very strong familial disposition to glaucoma and refused to be tested for it. Also, puff isn't that bad, guys. Try contacts. Your eyes stop fighting back pretty quick. The puff is a lot better than the old machine. It just hit you on the eyeball with a little ball and a lever. I also have plenty of patients that don't understand family history. I interview patients directly, so we don't have any real paperwork, and too many people can't answer simple questions. Do you or any of your direct family members have diabetes? Yes. Yourself or your family? Alternatively, if yes to family members, they start listing their spouse's family or stepchildren, not how genetic disposition works. Or after getting no answers to diabetes, hypertension, glaucoma, thyroid problem, heart problems, etc., I ask if they take any medications. Yeah, atorvastatin, thyroidazine, metformin, and low-dose aspirin. Oh, so you have everything I asked about. Check. Want some more? Way too many people don't understand presbyopia. As you age, your lens hardens and can't focus up close anymore. Of course, when this is explained, I get a lot of people who believe they're way too young for bifocals. No, 60 is not too young for bifocals. Why doesn't the doctor have to wear bifocals? He does. He's wearing progressives. You don't see the line. Or after trying to get used to multifocal lenses for a few days, giving up and demanding we remake them as single vision, and then getting mad at me again when they can't read with them. I never needed bifocals before. Why can't you just make me regular glasses? Regular glasses always work just fine. Yeah, you used to be 20. Also, you came to see us because you can't read with your regular glasses. In the same vein, these same people complaining about their own insurance to me because progressives are expensive. A line bifocal is covered entirely. Progressives cost a lot. I can't have lines in my glasses like an old person. Then you want progressives. This easily triples the bill. Why are you so expensive? I need to be able to see. Yeah, you need a bifocal. You don't need a progressive, you want a progressive. Insurance pays for what you need, not want. I actually had a guy make me talk to his insurance agent about him needing medically necessary progressives. A progressive lens is never medically necessary. Stop being cheap and listen to what I say. I am not a salesman, I'm a medical professional. Stop acting like you know better than me. 80-plus-year-old patient who was declining with multiple diagnoses and about 3 decubitus ulcers. Daughter was adamant that her father be kept on his strict paleo diet because that would supercharge his healing. She had a stack of diet books. He simply wasn't getting enough nutrition to heal the ulcers. He didn't like the diet at all, by the way. At some point, you kind of have to stop being polite and just tell patients and family members bluntly that you don't have time for this crap and what you recommend they can do and what they want and just document everything. It happens a lot, but she sticks out. TLDR, gross eyeball stories from eye doctor. I recently had a 30-year-old insulin-dependent male argue he knows when to take his sugar medicine. He had bilateral retinopathy and a severe vitreous heme in one eye, legally blind. Driving a car last eye check 8 years ago, lost glasses 2 years ago. Will need 4 more surgeries, including an inevitable cataract. I had a patient tell me they clean their contact lens with milk because it gets the acid off them. I had a patient ask me if it was okay to look briefly at the sun for short periods of time to improve their eyes. I was amazed and kindly suggested they don't. Had a patient put eardrops in one eye, white part of eye, conjunctiva, scarred over entire cornea and was left with no light perception. Asked me if he should have come in sooner. It had been 4 months. He needs a cornea transplant, which suck and take over a year to recover from. Patient with a retinal detachment told me to put more medicine in their glasses to see better. Macula was off, so they could barely count fingers 4 feet in front of their face. Had a patient wear contacts designed for 2-week daily wear, left in for 8 months. They literally grew into and became a part of the eye. It was repulsive. Had a patient with a 6-year-old translating. Basically, no clue besides eye hurts. Her hand covering her eye. I asked to see the problem. Her eye looked like a shriveled up grape. The optic nerve was holding onto a shriveled up, decayed eye loosely hanging in the orbit. She wanted glasses. Had a lady put jock itch in her eye to cure her suspected fungus. I asked her why she thought it was a fungal infection, and she just had an inkling. They are rare. Cataracts on a 58-year-old male working rooftops for 30 years with no sunglasses. Best corrected vision was count fingers 6 feet one eye, barely seeing better in other. First eye exam. Mad when told he needs surgery and should not drive a car. Had a patient tell me the benefits of using alcohol wipes to clean her privates. Out of the blue. I'm an eye doctor. Had a guy clean his contacts and shower with shampoo because he was convinced it was better. Raging red eye 2 weeks later. Homemade contact solutions are always fun to hear. Vinegar? Salt water? Spit is not cleaner than fresh solution, but please tell me more. Had a guy recently come in because wife made me. Tried with tweezers to remove metal from cornea. Didn't look pretty. I removed the remaining metal rust with the needle and spinning burr tip brush. Antibiotics Q2 hours. Told him to not do that again. Had a patient crush a pill up and put in eyes. It was an eye vitamin but taken by mouth. Her eyes were angry. I had a patient walk in one day with no glasses or contacts. Had full penetrating cornea transplant in both eyes 17 years ago. Last eye exam was 12 years ago. Swore he could see fine. Clearly a transplant graft rejection, one eye with no functional vision, and other was a gnarly looking good eye. I barely got him seeing with glasses on the one eye and can't drive. Uncontrolled diabetes too. Messy. Have had more than one patient argue with me about not seeing right. They either had 2 or more contacts in the eyes or none at all. When they try to remove a contact that is not there, it causes a painful abrasion. Multiple women using non-approved glues to glue on fake eyelashes. Leaks and burns in eyes. Just why? Using fake contacts from the nail salon. Then it never ceases to amaze me when I hear, I just use the same solution until it turns brown or black. Every day. Had a patient using a homeopathic drop to cure itchy eyes. She had pubic lice living on her lashes and they lay eggs and bite. Repulsive. But still convinced the drops cause the lice? Here's a link to a Wikipedia article about crab louse. You pluck the offending lashes out and use a cream to kill the crap you can't see. Thank God that was only once. I have to convince a lot of people to not use hand sanitizer in their eyes. Way too many, actually. I had a patient not taking her herpetic eye drops just because she wanted to pray instead. Yes, herpes on eye. Luckily, I convinced her to do both medicine and pray. I could go on and on. I'm a dental student. One patient in particular is a pathological liar. During one visit, they claimed to have gone to medical school. Next visit was that they did dental army. Last visit was that they had a PhD. The patient will say things like, "Hey doc, do you need me to move my head mesial or distal?" "No, I need you to move your head right." "Hey doc, are these cavities being caused by the anaerobic pathology microbes?" "No, they're caused by you eating snacks all day and not brushing." I'm an OR nurse, and I had an oral surgery patient who had a self-reported history of 250 plus various surgical procedures, a list of 20-some allergies, tons of reported health issues, plus her preteen son supposedly had dozens of health issues as well. She refused to remove her glasses during induction, started screaming and crying about claustrophobia when we put the mask on her face. She also insisted on taking a stuffed animal to the OR. Anyway, getting to the point. She was having oral surgery because she told us, insisted, that the last time she went to the dentist, they told her not to brush her teeth for at least a year. So she hadn't brushed her teeth in like a year and a half. That one was for the books. Pediatric dental is a minefield for I am very smart material. But why does my child have 17 cavities? We don't drink soda or eat processed sugars. All we drink is organic juice and eat those real fruit gummies. Well, fruit has a lot of sugar in it, but the bottle says no sugar added. Right, there's no additional sugar added, but there's already a lot in there naturally. Oh, and we're an all-natural household, so we don't use fluoride toothpaste. And we don't floss because the material the floss is made out of is toxic. Oh, and a lot of times we don't brush their teeth before bed because we're too tired. My favorite excuse for not flossing their child's teeth is, "Do you know how hard it is to floss a kid's teeth?" I mean, I'm a pediatric dental hygienist, so yeah. Where to start? Picture a middle-aged man. His index finger is 5 times the size of the rest of his fingers. It smells, it's leaking pus, there's necrotic tissue, basically one huge infected cancerous finger. He was a firm believer in not taking any sort of medication, including antibiotics or chemo. Died a few weeks later, but he did manage to tell us we were all idiots before he passed away. Patient was a young child who came in with an extremely high blood glucose level. Once she was stable, we did some teaching, and I kept her for a few days for observation. For some reason, every time I checked her, her levels would be extremely high although we were appropriately treating her. Turns out her family would bring her fast food for every meal and hide it in the side table. More teaching and resources were put into place. Had a mom in hysterics because she was convinced that her neighbors, friends, stepsons, teacher's dog has MRSA, so her baby was going to die. It took everything within me to not tell her that most of the hospital staff have MRSA. Just had some amazing people inform me with several scholarly documents that MRSA isn't as prevalent as once thought. It's only about 5% of hospital staff. Thank you, wonderful people. But it took 3 hours for me to calm her down after I called infectious control, her pediatrician, gynecologist, and family doctor. Yes, I had to call all these people. Yes, they laughed at me. Yes, she was beside me the whole time, questioning their judgment. I love my job, but at times it makes me crazy. I'm gonna leave you all with this wild ride of a story. ERRN here. Not a physician, but you may find this interesting. Young adult male presents with multiple abscesses on various parts of his body. States he injected his boyfriend's semen into himself trying to get pregnant. He tells one of the APCs he should have gone with his original plan and tried on his dog first. Psych clears him. He's admitted to the floor and gets IV antibiotics. What? I've heard of not sticking your woohoo in crazy, but that dude's boyfriend was sticking a lot more than woohoo in crazy. Wow, that's phenomenal. As a psych doctor, we allow for stupidity, but man, that sounds extra special. So, if psych cleared him, that means they determined he wasn't delusional, which means they somehow figured out with a degree of certainty that he was just that stupid. As someone who has done ER mental health assessment in the past, I would love to have been there to hear the series of questions that led them to, yep, he's actually that stupid.
What are some weird historical facts or events that most people don't know about? Ibrahim I, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, had 280 of his concubines drowned in the ocean because one of them had slept with another man. A slightly more positive fact is that officially the longest war in history was between the Netherlands and the Isle of Sicily. It lasted from 1651 to 1985, 335 years. There were no casualties. Gets posted on Reddit pretty often, but still unknown to some. In 1932, the Australian Army gathered machine guns and went to war against a bunch of emus in what would be known as the Great Emu War. I read this and kind of forgot what an emu was, and then I thought they were those little furry guys in Star Wars, and was super confused for like 10 seconds. Emus are vicious, heartless monsters whose sole reason for existence is to remind us that dinosaurs used to be in charge. Didn't the Wikipedia page have a casualties section at one point, under which was listed dignity? If your grandparents are over the age of 80, they will have lived for 1/3 of US history. If you're 30, you've lived for 1/8 of US history. When the barbarians sacked Carthage, they burned and pillaged pretty much everything but the sanctuary where St. Augustine was staying. He was on his deathbed and the barbarians respected him so much for his influence, even though they hated the church, that they decided to leave him alone. There was a gang war called the Great Nordic Biker War, where hundreds of American bikers stole armaments from several Scandinavian military bases and terrorized the streets while killing each other. If I recall correctly, they stole the weapons originally to sell back to the States, but the banditos used an anti-tank rocket to destroy a Hells Angels clubhouse in Sweden. You change a couple of locations and this is the plot to Sons of Anarchy. Let it be known that this sent the Nordic countries-based narrator scurrying to Wikipedia, where he was shocked to learn that the whole debacle was in fact a thing with nearly 100 casualties. During the 16th century, Nicolas Fouquet was the Minister of Finances in France under King Louis XIV. He had the castle of Vaux-le-Vicomte built for a crap ton of money, and had the most rad parties there. 16th century, they still said things like rad then. He invited the king to one of these parties and made it the raddest of all the rad parties, like top 3 raddest in France's history. Looking at all the food and fireworks and fountains and all the bling, King Louis XIV found it suspicious. Where was this money coming from? He was also very much jealous of such splendor when his own castle was mostly empty. So Louis XIV had Fouquet arrested, imprisoned, and then investigated and found guilty. In that order. Arrested by D'Artagnan, the guy who inspired Alexandre Dumas' Fourth Musketeer. And then he ordered the castle of Versailles to be made even more beautiful than Vaux-le-Vicomte. In conclusion, Versailles Castle was built as it is today because the king was jealous of his Minister of Finances, among other reasons. The CIA made a spy cat, a cat that could lurk around and record information that they sunk several $1 million into, and it promptly walked into traffic. The Soviets had anti-tank dogs they strapped explosives to, that didn't want to run at the tanks for obvious reasons and frequently blew up their own forces. I always heard the Soviet anti-tank dogs failed because they were trained with Soviet tanks, so promptly ignored the enemy and went straight towards Soviet tanks, as they were trained to do. When Fort Sumter was attacked by the Confederates in 1861, no one had gotten killed from the attack, but the Confederates later had a party, for a reason I do not know, and when one of their drunk butts shot a gun, it killed one of their own. That was the only death that occurred during the 3 days of the attack on Fort Sumter. Confederates kept on partying even though they saw the man dead. President Lyndon B. Johnson would have highways cleared out by the Secret Service, get in a car with a 6-pack of beer, and gun it down the highway, downing beer after beer. You can leave Texas, but the Texas never leaves you. The Romans used human urine as mouthwash. Pisterine, anyone? During the evacuation of Dunkirk in World War II, in that moment of despair, desperation, and overall bleakness, on the beach there was a workers' strike by a group of British rail workers regarding overtime. Very strange thing to happen in the face of events. That Henry Ford attempted to build an entire city in the middle of the Amazon to supply his company, and the United States, with a reliable source of rubber. Unfortunately, the entire scheme fell apart, although one can still visit the ruins on the site, complete with all the amenities 1920s Americans could want. Salieri did not kill Mozart. This is a legend. Mozart drank and died in poverty. I heard also that it was a myth that he died in poverty and had a pauper's burial. Apparently, a lot of money was spent on his funeral as well. 10-minute lobotomies. 2 methods were used. Either you had to drill holes in the head, or the later method that was using a metal pick to hammer through the eye sockets. In both methods, a metal instrument was used to mush brain. Local anesthesia was used, the patient could go home in the same day. The doctor did a couple of thousand of these and could do multiple surgeries a day. Also, because anesthetic was costly, they just stunned the patient with an electroshock therapy machine, which was pretty commonly available. Max Tremmel, a priest on the Winter Walk one day in 1894, witnessed a young boy slip through some broken ice on the River Inn and saved the boy from certain drowning. That boy would grow up to be the Chancellor of the Third Reich. In 1919, a molasses storage tank busted. A wave of molasses, 25 feet high, ripped through the streets of Boston, killing 21 people and injuring 150 others. It is estimated that the tank contained 2.3 million gallons, 87,000 cubic meters, of molasses when it collapsed. It became known as the Great Molasses Flood. They should have called it the Molassacre. London also had a great beer flood. 135,000 imperial gallons of beer destroyed several streets. Not that it's a competition or anything. I would like to note that the Molassacre both killed and injured more people than the Great Nordic Biker War, proving both that it was a very sticky situation and that even a Nordic Biker War is a very mild affair. The Twilight Zone was one of the first television shows to feature a nearly all-black cast on a dramatic show that was not dealing with racial issues. This was all because Rod Serling, who was quoted in saying, "Television, like its big sister, the motion picture, has been guilty of a sin of omission. Hungry for talent, desperate for the so-called new face, constantly searching for a transfusion of new blood, it has overlooked a source of wondrous talent that resides under its nose. This is the Negro actor." The episode was The Tall Big Wish, which was part of the first season of the show, and it was awarded the 1961 Unity Award for Outstanding Contributions to Better Race Relations. Did he just talk like he was introducing the Twilight Zone? Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, America's 50th birthday. Adams's last words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." He was wrong. Jefferson had died hours earlier in Virginia. Apparently, 3 presidents died on July 4th, although James Monroe was not in the same year. During his travels in Africa, the guy that invented Jameson liquor bought an 11-year-old girl as a forced laborer, and then fed her to cannibals just to see what it was like. He sketched while they ate her. Not really weird, but a fun piece of history that not many people know is about the origin of an announcer calling a horse race. On February 5th, 1927, in Tijuana, Mexico, there was a film being shot at the racetrack. A track official noticed the way a director was using a microphone and a loudspeaker to direct his crew and actors during the filming. The idea came to him that if he had a microphone set up in the steward's booth that led to a set of speakers, he could call the position of horses like a director gave direction. Later that day, he had it set up without telling any of the patrons to the track about it. When people first experienced it, they were extremely confused. Before that, people would keep track of the horses themselves with binoculars and were often unable to get a great view at certain angles. After they got used to it, they loved hearing a race being called, and it became an everyday thing at that small track. Now it's an extremely important part of modern-day racing all across the world, and even people that aren't familiar with the sport know about it. Fidel Castro actually wanted to be allies with America, since they were only 70 miles north and a world superpower, and Cuba desperately needed economic assistance. But because of containment and strong anti-communist sentiment, Eisenhower and Nixon both refused to meet him. So Castro turned to the other world superpower, the Soviet Union, for economic assistance, and Khrushchev welcomed him with open arms. And that's how the Cuban Missile Crisis began. The Roman Senate of the Roman Republic wasn't officially supposed to be a legislative body with authority to pass laws. Officially, it could only recommend legislation to the magistrates, who didn't technically have to obey. However, there was an extremely strong precedent to obey official advice from the Senate, so it almost always was followed during the Republican period. During the Empire, the authority of the Senate was reduced further. It's worth noting, however, that the Senate didn't only issue advice. Outside of legislative issues, they did have other authorities and powers in addition to the immense influence they carried. It's treason, then. In medieval times, the accused often faced a trial by ordeal, where they were forced to stick their arms into a vat of boiling water. If their arm emerged unscathed, it was believed God protected them, thus proving their innocence. They also had a trial by iron up to the 18th century, where you had to hold a red-hot iron bar in your hand and run a specified distance. The hand would then be wrapped up, and you would wait a few days. If your hand or skin was corrupted when the bandages came off, then that was God determining your guilt, and you were hanged. Simpler times. It's a bit more complicated than that. The hand would be withdrawn and then treated and bandaged. The bandage would be removed a week later. If the wound had turned septic, you were guilty. If not, you weren't. The hand didn't have to be unscathed, that is after all what scathing means. This was all managed anyway. The guys in charge of the trial would sometimes allow the water to cool somewhat before the hand was put in. This could probably be managed by payment, or if they liked you more than they liked the accuser. Yes, as a history student, it is always worth noting that where things like this that are shocking to our sensibilities come up, they were often much more nuanced and seldom used than factoids like this would have you believe. Most people didn't want to kill their neighbors, especially ones who were very useful to the community. Something I always like to talk about, there once existed an alleged theoretical state of war that lasted 335 years and 19 days, and was between the Dutch and an archipelago off the coast of southwest England called the Isle of Scilly. What's more, there were no casualties because the Dutch forgot that they were at war with the Isles. It wasn't until a Scilly historian contacted the Dutch about the war in 1985 and received the information that the war was still technically going that a peace treaty was signed in 1986. Can you just imagine if they gathered to end this war and the leaders started arguing about who won? So much so that a real war would break out. It's common practice to wear the bottom button of a vest or waistcoat undone. Sometimes vests are even cut with the bottom edge curving away so that the button is purely decorative. The reason for this is that Edward VII of England was a chonker. He undid his bottom button for gut comfort, and it turned into the style as courtiers imitated him. Relatedly, the fashion of wearing wigs, which prevailed in European fashion for 150 years, started because the French king got bald and needed one. Hernando de Soto is responsible for the collapse of several North American civilizations and the deaths of untold millions of people. He and his band of men were the first Europeans to make a concerted expedition into what's now the USA. He started in Florida and eventually his men made it to Louisiana, with many detours along the way. De Soto dies along the way, but that's unimportant. What's important is that they brought about 300 pigs with them for food because they breed quickly and can live off almost anything. Unfortunately, they also serve as a host for various diseases that humans are susceptible to. Lots of the pigs escaped, reproduced, destroyed farmland, and spread diseases. By the time the next Europeans came to those areas, the civilizations De Soto and his men saw had utterly collapsed, and the population had catastrophically fallen as well. Similarly, the vast numbers of buffalo and passenger pigeons are thought to be the result of the death of North American native peoples and the collapse of their civilizations, particularly the ability to maintain agricultural systems. That's also thought to be tied to a period of global cooling as an entire continent's worth of people stopped using fire to control plant growth and forests expanded massively, resulting in vast amounts of CO2 being pulled from the atmosphere. Magellan is not the first person to circumnavigate the globe. He never made it. He died in the Philippines. There was a 100-hour war between El Salvador and Honduras in 1969. The war caused the death of about 3,000 people. The war was triggered by a football or soccer game. It has been known as the Football War. Other than the whole football part, this conflict is known for having the last actual dogfights between piston-engined, prop-driven fighters. Honduras had the 4, 5, and 5N variants of the F-4U Corsair, while the Salvadorian Air Force had some beat-up Corsairs and some demilitarized P-51 Mustangs, which they rearmed and set up. One Honduras pilot even had 3 kills during the short conflict. You didn't have to be ethnically Spanish to be a conquistador. There were conquistadors from England and Germany, but the rules to become one involved Hispanicizing your name and converting to Catholicism if you weren't already Catholic. The sound made by the Krakatoa volcanic eruption in 1883 was so loud it ruptured eardrums of the people 40 miles away, traveled around the world 4 times, and was clearly heard 3,000 miles away. That's like you standing in New York and hearing the sound from San Francisco. There's a tribe in Vanuatu that worships Prince Philip as a literal god. There was a TV show on it where they came over to England to meet him and experienced snow for the first time. It was fascinating. On the Lewis and Clark expedition, a vote regarding what direction they should go was held on the coast of Washington amongst the party members. This vote included Sacagawea and York, Lewis's slave. Thus, because the expedition was funded by the US military, this was the first time in American history where a woman and a black man were allowed to participate in a vote of any kind related to government affairs. Pope Gregory IX called for black cats to be killed, as he believed they are incarnations of Satan. The mass killing of cats increased the number of rats in Europe. The increased number of rats helped to spread the plague all throughout Europe. He also had a steam yacht called the Saucy Sue, which was moored off the coast of the West Indies, in which he hosted the entire England cricket team and the Balinese goddess of plenty. That Blackadder quote probably didn't deserve a place in this list of historical events, but it made me laugh, and hopefully it made you laugh too, listener. Legend holds that the Renaissance artist Raphael died of exhaustion and fatigue due to excessive fornication with his mistress, Fornarina. That sounds like something Raphael would want to be said about him after his death. Tell everyone that I died banging that chick. His buddies Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello all agree to spread the lie. Thomas Jefferson collected so many books in his lifetime that he would go into debt. After the British burned Washington, D.C. in the Battle of 1812, he had sold most of his books to the Library of Congress to replace those that were lost in the fire. Jefferson had spent 50 years accumulating a wide variety of books in several languages and in many subjects, including philosophy, science, literature, architecture, law, religion, and mathematics. The nearly 6,500 books netted him $23,950. The sum is from so long ago that you actually can't calculate its modern worth. We can do those calculations since 1913 when we instituted the Federal Reserve and started tracking inflation. In 1913, that $23,950 would have been worth a little over $600,000. If you use a standard inflation rate of 3% from years 1812 to 1913, it becomes about 11 million. But inflation was probably much higher, especially when taking into account the debt we went into for the Civil War and the Reconstruction, which was over $2 billion in real 1865 dollars. 26th President Theodore Roosevelt was an ardent supporter of William Howard Taft. The two were longtime friends, and Taft was Roosevelt's most trusted cabinet member. When Roosevelt's latter term came to a close, he successfully campaigned for Taft's election to the presidency. However, when Taft began enacting many policies that his predecessor found disagreeable, Roosevelt grew sour toward his friend. He vied for the Republican presidential nomination and failed. He then literally marched his supporters out of the Republican Convention Hall and created a new party. Under this party's new banner, Roosevelt split the Republican vote and ensured Taft's defeat. This leads to the story of the attempted assassination of Roosevelt when he was on his way to give a speech. His 90-minute, several pages long speech was folded up in his steel eyeglass case, and the bullet went through the steel and paper, losing enough momentum that it wasn't able to puncture his lungs. Roosevelt felt the shot, but he saw he wasn't bleeding heavily or coughing up blood, so he figured he wasn't in immediate danger and gave the 90-minute speech anyway. He started the speech by saying, "I don't know whether you fully understand that I've just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." A spiritualist who believed in harnessing orgone energy, as in energy from the human climax, sent Einstein what is fundamentally a nonsense machine for harnessing the energy. Einstein spent an afternoon trying to analyze this thing before sending an apologetic letter explaining that this machine was just nonsense. Albert Einstein could also have been president of Israel when it was formed, but he declined. Gladiators endorsed products like modern-day sports stars do. They also rarely died and had, for the time, incredible healthcare. The costs sunk into a star gladiator were immense. Having them die would be a huge loss. Untrained slaves and animals were a different story, of course. I'd actually like to see a modern gladiatorial renaissance myself, maybe sans animal cruelty and slavery, of course. Medieval combat sports are sort of getting there. Thomas Jefferson had a ram as a pet. He called it the abominable animal. It was aggressive as heck, and Jefferson usually tied it outside buildings he was in, and it attacked a lot of people just walking by it. It even killed a boy. He only had it killed once it started attacking his other sheep. WTF, Thomas. Maybe I've been watching too much Hamilton, but outside his intellect, Jefferson doesn't seem to have had a whole lot of redeeming qualities. The American invasion fleet for the Philippines during World War II was saved from complete destruction by a small support group named Taffy 3, composed of 13 smaller support vessels. The Japanese fleet meant to destroy the invasion force was made up of nearly twice as many larger fighting ships, including 4 battleships, one of which was the super battleship Yamato. The escort carriers, which were merely converted merchants' vessels, could not outrun any of the Japanese vessels. Taffy 3 did not have any guns larger than 5 inches. To put it in comparison, the anti-aircraft guns of some of the larger vessels in the Japanese fleet had similar caliber guns. Yamato alone outweighed every ship in Taffy 3 combined. The battle itself was one of the largest mismatches in naval history. The carriers scrambled every aircraft they had on board, which was close to up to 400 aircraft. The destroyers and destroyer escorts laid a smokescreen for the carriers. One of them made a headlong charge directly at the larger Japanese force to get into launching range for the torpedoes. Other vessels took their example and made similar torpedo runs. One torpedo sheared off the bow of the heavy cruiser Kumano, another crippled the heavy cruiser Chokai. The aircraft repeatedly strafed, bombed, and even depth-charged the fleet. Once they ran out of ammo, they continued to make dry runs at ships so as to distract the gunners from firing on friendly vessels. There were reports of pilots flinging empty Coke bottles, charts, and clipboards at ships. One pilot pulled his .45 caliber Colt and shot at a cruiser with it. The Japanese made several errors in the engagement, including the order of a general attack, which meant each vessel could engage and maneuver freely. This made a lot of miscommunication and confusion. They also misidentified the small escort carriers for larger ones, because of the crap ton of aircraft airborne, and also mistook the small destroyers as heavy cruisers. These errors made Taffy 3 look like the outer elements of a much larger American fleet. Thinking this, the Japanese admiral regathered his forces and retreated. This gave enough time for Taffy 3 to retreat and alert the main American fleet, which had been distracted by another Japanese fleet meant to lure them away. It sailed back and bombed the crap out of the remaining warships of the original Japanese fleet. The stories of heroism and bravery on board the American vessels are almost unbelievable. The story of the battle itself is also quite interesting, including when a single shot from the 5-inch Stinger gun of a carrier managed to cripple a heavy cruiser. In conclusion, American fleet composed of support vessels fought a Japanese task force several times larger than it and won. Saved tens of thousands of lives.
What do you miss that disappeared during the pandemic? Being able to afford things. Same salary and crazy inflation. What a great combo. I feel this, but I'm also jealous. I went from working minimum wage during college to making really good money, but having to move to an area with astronomical prices of living, plus inflation, so I still can't afford anything. When do I get to the part where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck? I thought at this level of income it meant that I would be rich. I miss when I enjoyed my job. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but COVID really changed the way my hospital runs, and not for the better. All the good staff that could jump ship did jump, and if they replaced them at all, it was with travelers or warm bodies, and our quality of care has certainly suffered. Not to mention the organization I work for is buying up all sorts of crap, but when we need vital equipment, we are told that there is no money for it. Even more insulting is this stupid freaking robot they bought that's sole purpose is to deliver things between departments. I'm pretty close to quitting healthcare forever at this point. Normally I don't entertain when people crap on America, but for real, as someone on the inside, our healthcare system is freaking appalling. Respirator therapist here. Pre-pandemic, I was super bubbly and chipper. It was easy for me to relate to patients and families. I used to wear bows in my hair. Patients loved it and said it brightened up their day. A year into COVID and the bows stopped. I stopped being able to connect with people because everyone was dying. I became closer to my coworkers, but basically was a robot to patient care. I still do all the things that were required of me and try to do extra when I can, but my heart, or what used to be my heart, isn't in it right now. I smile and say all the right things, but I don't feel like I used to. I'm trying to get back to my chipper, bubbly, unjaded self, but I worry that that part of me died with the hundreds of patients during the pandemic. I miss feeling like I was making a difference. A slight more reasonable cost of living. Everything has gotten so expensive across the board. And every industry is posting record profits. Even the egg shortage led to the highest quality profits in the industry that had ever been seen in America. Capitalism gonna capitalism. Restaurants having late hours and, more importantly, correctly posted hours of operation. I swear it's been like a crapshoot knowing when even large franchises will close, when their actual hours don't match Google, Apple Maps, or their own damn website half the time. Picking up lunch on the way to my overnight shift has become such a gamble. Like, is that place gonna be open or will the other place be open? I'll admit, I save some money by packing a lunch, but I miss picking up food twice a week on my way to work. 24-hour Walmarts and all-day breakfast at McDonald's. Stuff being open after 9. Working second shift got harder when everything closed after. Right? Sucks when your break is at 8 p.m., so when you get hungry, oop, everything's closed. Need to go grocery shopping after work? Nope. Stuff is closing before the sun even goes down, and it's killing me at my core. Went to Starbucks last night, Saturday, by second shift count, and they must have been closed at 8. Rushed to get something for dinner, place closed at 10 p.m. and I got there at 9:30. Pretty sure their sanitation standards dropped by 7 or 8. Because there was a freaking piece of wood in my steak and cheese. Not to mention the crap explosion I suffered soon after. So it's not even that everything's closed early, the standards have absolutely dropped as well. Not sure if this person lives in a town or a city, but I don't think before or after the pandemic had places closing that early. Starbucks has always closed at 10 p.m. where I live, except maybe on Sundays. Also, our major grocery stores don't close till 1 a.m. My social skills. Seriously, I found myself extremely awkward as things started opening up. Oh, and social stamina. Went to a baby shower for about 2.5 hours and to the department store for like an hour yesterday. Came home so exhausted, and I took a nap for an hour. Then a few hours later, I went to bed and slept for 13 hours straight. Like, what the freak? My job. Company went under. It was a love-hate relationship, but I suffered for it. Civility. I mean, it wasn't great to begin with, but post-pandemic, no one seems to know how to act in public anymore. I remember a viral video from the start of the lockdowns of a dad with a British accent telling a bedtime story to his kids about how the world was going to pull together and be even better after the pandemic was over. Narrator here, we didn't, and it isn't. No traffic, and no one. Everything wasn't crowded, and it didn't make me hate how people are literally everywhere. Dude, I relate. I remember driving on the highways and driving downtown at night, and there was absolutely not a soul in sight. It was pretty amazing and a little frightening. Closest thing to a post-apocalyptic world we might ever experience. My belief that most people are reasonable and compassionate. Me too. I used to be so optimistic and believed the good in people. I have completely lost all hope, and I just don't care about people anymore. Maybe I'm part of the problem, but damn it, I've lost any and all patience with anyone. 24-hour stores and food that had better quality. It seems like all food went downhill in quality. Fast food, sit-down restaurants, takeout, and grocery stores. Honestly, I've noticed that all the layoffs during COVID cut the hours and the business quality. Corporations don't want to return to normal. They make enough money now and pay less people to do the same job. General friendliness. People care less about each other than they used to. I'm a firm believer that people never cared about each other. They were just too scared of the social consequences of showing it, so everyone just got good at pretending. Driving skills. People have been driving like freaking idiots. The average normal driver, everyone on the road seems to be too aggressive and entitled, all while using their phone. My grandpa. I'm sorry for your loss. For everyone's loss. Father-in-law for us. Friends. So no one told you that life was gonna be this way? Clap, 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 clap. Paper menus. I'm tired of scanning QR codes and dealing with terrible interfaces and slow Wi-Fi just to order a meal. So true. A lot of restaurants I go to are in this weird internet dead zone, so loading a menu up on my phone is always such a massive pain. Honestly, I can't say I've ever had to do this. Is this like an LA, New York, or Chicago type thing? Empty areas. I very much dislike crowds, traffic, and lines. I remember my first proper drive during the strictest lockdown here. It was glorious. People. We were deemed essential services and were forced to work. We didn't want to be called heroes. The people did that to make themselves feel better. Now that COVID is over, the people are back to treating us like pure garbage again. Screw people. I quit my grocery job 2 years into the pandemic after being there since 2017. I would have people pass me and be like, "Thank you for your service." And then by halfway through the first year of it, I had people treating me like crap again. The level of stress and anxiety we endure was astronomical compared to years past. I drank the Kool-Aid and really believed that we were making a difference. But sadly, most could care less as long as they got what they wanted. As a team, we really had to lean on each other to get through it. And you really find out about one's character. I remember the great toilet paper pandemic. You'd wheel out a cage and it was picked clean before you even got to the TP aisle. You could take out a pallet of TP, unwrap it, and just stand at the end of the aisle with your manager just watching the absolute lunatics. We kept a stash of TP out in the back. If we saw a distressed looking old person / working person, we'd go up to them and be like, "Psst," and tell them to meet us by the staff door and we'd bring them TP. It was like being a substance dealer. Good fun. I started at a grocery store a little more than a month before the pandemic lockdown started. I never thought much of the pandemic. But early on, there would be people coming in and thanking us for working, for being open, treating us like first responders combating the pandemic on the front lines. It's not that that's gone now, it didn't even last the pandemic. Lockdowns kept getting pushed further and further until it became the new normal. People became more and more frustrated and anxious in their daily lives. Holding up till mid-March, when it still felt like winter hadn't quite ended yet and it was going to be another 2 weeks. Only go out for essential reasons, people could do that. But then it stretched. The weather got nicer and people got cabin fever. People gradually learned and were told outright that your summer was going to be gone. Any plans you made? Gone. The world is different and scary. Every day, fear for your lives. Soon, us heroes on the front lines were now the only people that were allowed to interact with and vent with those frustrations. People just wanted somebody to yell at, and we were the only ones available. Man, I worked retail for 5 years during the height of Black Friday when people were being killed for items, but after hearing so many pandemic stories, I can say that it probably wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I'll never go back to retail because people are the worst. My control over my phone and social media, it got so much worse. My confidence. After years and years of working on it, I'm back to square one and older. Keep working on it. I never thought in a million years that I would be as outgoing as I am now. Still not as much as other people, but a huge jump from where I was. Getting yourself out there and putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations, little by little of course, makes a huge difference. It eventually just becomes normal. And fake it. I always fake being calm and confident, and slowly it started to become a reality. Communication, especially in business. It seems like people never want to get back to you. There was this all-you-could-eat place. You could sit there at the table and order off the menu. Everything was made fresh and brought to your table. They closed during the pandemic. I relate to this one in 2 different cities actually. In San Diego, there was this pizza place that was a few blocks from the convention center that I always ate at every single day of the convention. Doesn't look like they made it out of the pandemic. And in Austin, Texas, there was this burger joint that had a burger called the Ron Burgundy, and it was served with an egg inside of it on donut bread. It was one of the most delicious things ever. They had to resort to being a food truck and they only do donuts now. It's sad to see how many pandemic casualties there were. Now that I think about it, I lost me. I'm not the same person. I'm trying hard to find myself still, and it's been hard. I can certainly relate to that. It's interesting how fragile your self-identity is and how quickly it can slip through your hands. Thanks for sharing this. I've been struggling with the same but couldn't articulate it. I've never really loved myself, but I find I'm missing my pre-pandemic self more and more. I feel like I'm sharing mental space with a stranger. Idiot customers. They came back after the pandemic ended, and now there are arguably even more idiotic customers. There is this strange correlation I've noticed. The most obnoxious and most self-entitled ones were usually the unvaccinated ones. I work at a sports store, and during the pandemic, we had a few months long period where we had to check COVID passes to allow entry into the store, as we were non-essential. This was around the time of the second lockdown. Don't remember if it was before or after. It was like hell, because I was usually the one standing out in front checking the COVID passes with a scanner on the phone. Even though we had taped off the entrance so that everyone would have to pass around me, there were still people who tried to get in. Unvaccinated people were either trying to get in by lifting the tape or ignoring me. Some were spewing some conspiracy theory bullcrap about microchips or whatever. Some used their chance to get in when I walked away from the entrance for a few seconds. Some people were showing me COVID passes that were clearly not theirs. Some tried to beg their way in, and had some people that wouldn't let me scan their passes because they didn't want me to take photos of their phone. Spontaneity. A lot of the first come, first serve things are now booked months in advance. One small example is the park near my house has a free concert series during the summer. You used to be able to just show up the day of. You had to get there early for good seats, but generally no pre-planning. Now you have to get a ticket a month in advance and they sell out within minutes. Then you still need to show up hella early to get good seats. The belief that I had to be in the office to do my job. I am fully aware that I can do my job completely from home. I don't have to do that horrible commute every day. I'm sure I'll be back to that commute any month now. Affordable food. $100 used to get me meat, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, milk, eggs, cheese, yogurt, drinks, snacks, etc. That would last almost 2 weeks. Now $100 will get me food to last maybe a week? If I ration and only eat once per day a few times. Meat is now a treat if I happen to have a bit of extra money one month. Fruit and vegetables are out of the cans. No dairy at all anymore. Unless it's 1 or 2 of those $1.99 yogurt drinks, which were 75 cents in 2019. Most stuff I eat now is out of the package or cans. You know, I used to be a fast food fiend and I wasn't really cooking anything, but after the whole anxiety and panic attack stuff that I've done with, I've tried to eat a little bit better, and so I don't really know how crazy things were. But I will say buying fish is pretty expensive. The optimism that a global lethal pandemic would lead to our government trying to save lives and change our healthcare structure. In the US, of course. I owe all the zombie movie directors an apology. I always said that if that happened, everyone would band together and unite with a common front to solve the problem, and nobody would possibly be so stupid or selfish. Instead, we had people hoarding toilet paper. Man, did I call this one wrong. During lockdown, I actually felt like my mental well-being improved, and this was for several reasons, but one was that I felt there was less bragging on social media, at least in my family. And there was no family drama with the extended relatives because we weren't visiting each other. Everybody was scared and locked down, so nobody felt jealous of each other. There was bigger fish to fry. Then we got vaccinated, and then came the revenge traveling and revenge dining and so-called war on labor. And my aunts and cousins wanted to hang out again. And that opened the floodgates of family drama and constant sense of competition and no feeling good because that one cousin lost this much weight, one cousin has this much salary, one aunt got this much money from selling her house. I had to be the emotional support for my parents who were falling into these dumb status games. I missed those days in lockdown when my family stayed away and kept their status games to themselves. The 24-hour economy. Everything that was open 24 hours now closes at 9 p.m., midnight at the latest. Restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, fast food, etc. As a person who worked third shift, I felt pretty normal pre-pandemic, but now I struggle to get my crap done, especially on my days off. My faith in humanity, seeing how unwilling people are to suffer mild inconveniences to try to reduce the chance of others getting seriously ill or dying, or make immunocompromised people able to feel safer in public, has destroyed my faith in others. The illusion that half my family and friends weren't selfish jerks. We had a newborn several months into 2020, and the people who refused to accept that were isolated, at doctor's orders. They fought against every boundary precaution we had for my son, including ones they had no problem with for his older brother a couple years before. These same people tried every loophole possible and put themselves at risk for the whole year. And don't get me started on their sudden anti-vax stance. Not only did they put my newborn at risk, but other valuable family members too. Honestly, most of them are one step away from Q. Most people miss late night shopping, late night restaurants. I've been thinking about opening a food truck only after 11 p.m. because there isn't any competition. I could probably make bank just selling grilled cheese sandwiches. My local value theater. For like a $4 ticket, you could catch movies that had left theaters months ago. Would always do special Sunday screenings of classic films too. I miss being able to walk down and catch a movie or two on a whim. Opened my eyes to older cinema as well. First saw Casablanca and Rebel without a cause there. Fell through about a year after lockdown since it was a mom and pop place that wasn't backed by a major distributor. I used to be really outgoing, loved to go to libraries and coffee shops, just to read and people watch, and loved random social interactions. After all the temper tantrums about wearing masks and people acting generally horribly, people just exhaust me. I don't want to go anywhere anymore. Flying being relatively painless. Yes, it was tedious, but you usually got on your flight, mostly on time, and nobody hit flight attendants, had a toddler meltdown, or tried to open the door mid-flight. Now you need to pad in at least an extra day, and it's scary. Choco tacos. A good reason not to have people over. It came and went during the pandemic, so I still consider that to be disappearing during the pandemic. It was nice to say, nah, we're isolating. I figured why not end this video with a personal story. One thing I missed was having a plan and a goal. For context, at the end of 2020, I quit my job in glorious fashion. Check out the Blaze of Glory video for that story. I decided to become a full-time content creator. I had saved up enough money to cover all my bills, food, gas, and anything else I needed for 6 months. I told myself that I would do everything I could in those 6 months to become a successful content creator. Things were going great for the first 2 months. I made about $1,000 each month from streaming, and I was putting out 10 videos a week across 2 YouTube channels. Then in February, I had a panic attack for the first time ever. Literally thought I was going to die. I was basically bedridden for 2 weeks out of fear. I couldn't even go into my stream room because that was where my panic attack started. I finally started getting better after a few weeks, and bam! Another panic attack while I was washing clothes. After that, my brain was shot. I lived in constant fear of having another panic attack. When I thought I was finally getting better, another panic attack would happen, resetting my brain. So this life plan that I had for the next 6 months was ruined by panic attacks. I got lucky with those government stimulus checks that allowed me to pay for my bills when my savings ran out. I lost all of 2021 to just trying to get back to a normal mental state that was livable. I didn't really understand anxiety or panic attacks before. I thought it was just people that couldn't handle pressure. But now that I live with it, man, I feel for people that have had to deal with this their whole lives, or just got them during the pandemic like I did. I'm a lot better nowadays. 2022 was also a struggle, but not as bad as 2021. My best advice is to become more active if you aren't. Start working out every day, drop the junk food, and learn to live with anxiety. It sounds stupid, but it has helped me the most. You gotta fight that urge to get comfortable and just live in the anxiety. Over time, you'll get used to it.
What is the quickest way you've seen someone mess their life up? Just a fair warning, there's going to be a lot of drug use and sadness in this one. So, not so much bad as it was sad. This happened around 2006 to 2008. Can't remember exactly when because I was about 11 at the time. I had a friend in elementary school and middle school that lived within 2 miles from me and a CVS between our houses. Her, 12 years old, her little brother, 9 years old, and her mother, about 40-ish, were at CVS picking up a few things and were walking to their car in the parking lot. Apparently, as they were walking, the mother pushed both my friend and her brother away from her. My friend hit her head on the sidewalk and woke up to her brother screaming and crying. What happened was that as they were walking, the mother noticed a car that was slamming on the gas while trying to back out of a parking spot. The car was heading straight towards them and the mother pushed the kids out of the way. Car pinned the mother to the wall of the CVS and she died within minutes. The little brother saw the whole thing happen and has since been struggling with depression and traumatic PTSD since. And my friend got a concussion from the incident, lost her mother, and has never been the same. Sad thing is that the driver wasn't drunk or high or anything. It was a tiny little 80-year-old lady that wasn't used to driving the car and pressed too hard on the gas pedal. Don't exactly know what happened when the police got involved, but my friend has been messed up ever since. This forum has had a lot of comments about terrible people that have done terrible things. Not all bad things happen because of bad people. Sometimes they just happen. I had the pleasure of meeting the kindest person I've ever met. He came from a really snobby and popular family, but he was friends with literally everyone. He would hang out with the outcasts. He would actually come over if you posted online about how you were lonely. He didn't care at all about high school politics. I met him once and he made a significant impact on my life. He was just genuine about being fair and nice to everyone he met. He had every chance to be a jerk given that he was smart, good-looking, came from a wealthy family, but nope. He gave off this huge sense of peace when you were around him. If I had to describe the second coming of Jesus, it was him. A year after meeting him, he ends up missing for 3 days. Eventually, the story unfolds that he was at a party the night he went missing, but he was the designated driver for everyone, so it was odd that he just suddenly left before anyone else did. 3 days later, my brother finds him on an old logging road in his pickup, head blasted off with a shotgun. He had apparently taken shrooms and wanted to meet God. His family found his Bible and it was filled with highlighted passages about heaven and the soul finding peace with Jesus. I'm guessing that the church he went to had a lot to do with it. It was the kind where everyone affluent and popular goes to, but given that they were disgusting people, they didn't seem to practice what they preached. The evil go to hell, but not us because we are here on Sunday. At his funeral, the pastor had the gall to say he went to hell because he committed a sin by killing himself. That kind of church. I really miss you, Stevie. Thank you for showing me the single bit of kindness I ever found in that town. Not me, but a friend was in AP Chem and they were working with some sodium something and his classmates snorted it as a cocaine joke. He was rushed to the ER and now his risk for nasal and lung cancer is through the roof. His predicted lifespan is like mid-30s, maybe early 40s now, and it was all for a crappy drug reference. A fourth-year neurology resident got fired for attacking an Uber driver. She went through 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, and was about to finish her fourth and last year of residency, acquired hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt along the way, and blew it all after she physically assaulted somebody. My college roommate hit a patch of wet leaves on his motorcycle and hit the curb. The bike flipped and hit him in the chest. When the cops arrived, he was disoriented and bruised, but otherwise okay. The cops thought he was drunk and took him in. In the drunk tank, he complained that he couldn't breathe. The nurse looked him over and said he was fine. Later, he collapsed in his cell. The cops woke him up, handcuffed him, and drove him to the hospital. When they got there, he was dead. Punctured lung. Suffocated. He was 23 and a senior at a very good college. He worked full-time and paid his own way. He was funny and kind and empathetic. He was supposed to be someone important. You'd think over time I would miss him less, but as I get older, I just think of who he would be as an older person. As a parent, I think of the wonderful kids denied a chance to exist because of the stupidity of multiple officers, and it surprises me the visceral, primal sadness I still feel about his loss. This happened in a 2-week period. A friend of mine lost his kitchen job due to layoffs. Looked in the paper for a job he could get quick so he could make his bills, rent, etc. Finds a listing for a company looking for a driver/delivery person ASAP. He has a car, so he figures it would be a good quick fix. Calls and gets the job over the phone and is told he starts the next evening. Gets a quote-unquote company cell phone and does his first pickup. Turns out it's an escort agency and he's picking up and dropping off the talent. Does this for a few nights and starts getting to know the girls. Turns out they're all addicted to crack. Big surprise. They get the idea in his head that he's doing all the groundwork, so he might as well post the ads himself and get his own phone, and they'll work for him. So we're about a week into this adventure and he's gone from line cook to pimp. Fast forward a couple of days into pimping and he comes to the conclusion that all these girls spend their money on is crack. So why not cut out the middleman and start paying them in what they want? He doesn't know where to get crack, but his kitchen buddies can hook him up with coke. Gets a bag of coke and Googles how to make crack. Yes, really. Whips up a batch of kitchen crack and then is concerned that maybe he didn't make it correctly. So logically, he should try it first before giving it to his ladies. 36-hour crack binge later, he's hooked and proceeds to sell off everything, including the car and phone, in the next few days. I dropped by his place to hang out around day 10. I had no idea any of this was going on. He meets me at the door, explains what he's been up to for the past few days, and says he doesn't want me there unless I'd like to pay and hook up with one of the crackheads in his living room. Strangely, I declined. Last time I saw him, he was cracked out, yelling at people for change on a downtown street. 14 days and his entire life turned to garbage. I was the catcher for a kid in my town who was a nasty pitcher from an early age. At 16 or 17, he could throw 90-mile-per-hour fastballs, breaking balls, whatever. It was a pain to catch, and I had to keep a wet sponge inside my mitt in case I caught one directly in the palm. He was drafted 12th overall by the Marlins and received a $1.8 million signing bonus that he got before he even went to spring training. Ended up blowing over $1.5 million on drugs and partying, developed a coke habit that turned into an oxy habit that turned into heroin. Lost his ability to play, lost his spot on the team and his shot at many millions of dollars. It wasn't exactly overnight, but the dude wasted $1.5 million plus everything he would have gotten had he continued his upward trajectory, and it all happened in about 8 months. My ex-wife had 4 beautiful kids, 2 girls, twin boys, decent job, and an MBA with way more earning potential than she was at. Had bariatric surgery, got obsessed with the attention she received from losing weight, Instagram, etc. Met some guy on this game she played, cheated, tried to make it work, my fault for not ending it, went on a trip for work, met some other guy, quote, fell in love, meth and heroin, landed a surprisingly great job, got fired 2 months later for not performing and being late/sick all the time, double deposited her paychecks at least twice. Now she's awaiting trial for 4 felonies, presumably still doing drugs, and she has no right to see the kids because I refuse to let them see her around that crap. She makes no effort to see them and blames everyone else for her problems. Don't do drugs, kids, or be a self-obsessed ever victim. This kid I know, his cousin gave him a gun over the holidays as a present. So this idiot ordered pizza with his friends, and instead of paying, they robbed the delivery guy. Again, this is after they gave the address and name for the order. So now, because he just turned 18, he's being tried as an adult and faces like 10 years or more for being stupid. We were about 17, and me and my friends went to a beach house for summer. Well, there was a cliff, not so big one, should be around 5 meters high, and one of my friends decided to run and jump without checking how deep the sea was. Long story short, I had a lot of rocks, and he broke his back. He didn't screw over his life, but he lost both of his legs. Justine Sacco, the lady that tweeted, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white, and then got on an airplane. This story is too long to fit in the video, so just Google Justine Sacco and you should get an article explaining what happened. When I was in college, I had a job at a local supermarket. One of my colleagues left at the beginning of summer as she was headed to uni in the autumn. Next thing I know, she's in the papers because she was driving a car while someone was car surfing on it and the guy died. Saw her in the shop a couple weeks after it happened and she looked a mess. I believe she went to prison, but not sure how long for. I used to work at a little diner in Constance Bay, Ontario. I imagine I could find an article about this. Didn't happen to me, but to a customer. I would estimate that it was about 10 years ago now. This post was made 6 years ago. The customer, female, and her boyfriend were out drinking at the local watering hole. There was that bar in the Legion in the little town. Anyway, her and her boyfriend had driven to the bar, and when they left, they did the smart thing and left their car at the bar and decided to walk home. Constance Bay is quite small. Basically, it's a main road that loops around the whole town and all side roads branch off of that. The main road has a really sharp turn at one spot. So, her and her boyfriend are walking on the side of the road. No sidewalk since it's a little town. Everyone literally knows everyone. As they're walking, a guy hits them. The driver was wasted drunk. He had been cut off at the Legion a while before the incident. Her and her boyfriend were hit so hard they were thrown into the ditch. Her boyfriend was killed instantly and she was severely hurt. She laid in the ditch for a few hours, unable to move until someone driving by noticed a hand sticking up. 911 was called. She had a couple surgeries after. If I recall, they had to put a metal rod in her leg. So, after drunk idiot hits them, he keeps driving and takes the sharp curve I mentioned too fast and ends up hitting the garage of a house on the corner. This wakes up the owners of the house, who didn't think too much of it, as apparently this was a common occurrence. Thing is, the owners of the house were the parents of the girl who had just gotten hit. I remember hearing how shook up and guilty they felt when they found out what happened. So, drunk guy was caught and charged, obviously. I guess he was known in the area. His stupid decision not only ruined his life, but the lives of the girl, her boyfriend, and their friends and family. It was pretty sad. She would come into the diner for breakfast, and I remember seeing the massive brace she had on her leg. Screw drunk drivers. There was a kid I went to school with, we'll call him Jerry, who I thought was a perfectly nice guy. Jerry was kind of known as the flamboyant gay kid in my school. He was good at school, had lots of friends, was well known in the community, and had recently just been accepted to an extremely good college. Just a few weeks ago, Jerry went to a party and intentionally got a 17-year-old kid so drunk and high that he passed out. Once the kid fell asleep, this guy forced himself on him and took pictures of the entire process, while making faces and peace signs at the camera. The kid freaked out when he woke up and realized what happened. The police were immediately called. The police took Jerry's DNA and phone for evidence and quickly found over 150 nude pictures of underage boys from our local high school, and all of the pictures of Jerry forcing himself on this poor kid at a party. Jerry is only 18 and now faces charges for forcing himself on an unconscious victim, forcing himself on a minor, possession of CP, and multiple cases of inappropriate assault. Right now, it looks like he will serve a minimum of 5 years in prison, but it is likely to be more. Apparently more victims have recently stepped forward, so he may be even more screwed than he was before. I can only hope so. People like that deserve life in prison. A few months ago, I had a friend of mine ask me if I wanted to try crack with him. I was busy, so I politely declined. He now has 3 different dealers calling up at the job looking for money. He's totaled 2 cars, only one of which was his. Everyone hates him now because he's always begging for money and lying to everyone, and his mother had him locked up for stealing from her house. We've been watching this dude ruin his life for the past few months, and he won't listen to anyone when we tell him it's obvious his addiction is causing it. At a party with a friend. I didn't know our friends well. Someone offers us heroin and I want to leave. She, on the other hand, has a crush on the guy and wants to stay. She assures me she isn't interested in trying it. I try to talk her out of it and to just leave with me, but no. Plus, I'm starting to get crapped on for being lame and I want out. The last thing she said to me before I left was, "You're a drag and a terrible friend." I told her if worrying for her and my safety made me a drag and a bad friend, that I was okay with it. She died that night. So did he. Batch was laced with fentanyl and they both OD'd. Thank you all. I'm not okay, but those were our last words exchanged. I will always feel there was more that I could have done, the same way I feel that pang when I see a homeless person, or there is some horrible tragedy. Just part of the emotions of life. I know I had her best interest at heart and simply didn't have the life experience to know how to handle it past what I did. I did pretty well considering that. This was almost 10 years ago, and I've been through counseling and know it was not my fault. It's just never ever going to be a situation I can feel totally at peace about, and that's okay too. Some things just suck. This one's a lot, so be ready. It took 14 years to get to the point I could write this TLDR, and I appreciate everyone's concern and comments. Please consider donating to your local domestic violence shelter. I was very lucky to have the military keeping me safe and moving me across the country afterward. Very few women have any resources except the clothes they ran out the house with, assuming they got out alive. Extremely late to the party. Take out $35,000 credit card debt for online adult images. Pay the interest by borrowing from a Chicago gang. Not tell his wife he's bisexual before she finds it. Take out a big insurance policy on her while she's in Iraq thinking she'll die and he'll have $1 million to pay the card and the gang and live well. She doesn't die in Iraq, so he tries to strangle her while she's cooking dinner. He breaks her hand, but she chokes him out and escapes. He tries to fight police. He then tries to punch judges. Got 2 days for that. But his mama knows the judges, so the attempted murder as the domestic violence and the battery charges are dropped. Then he hides in the woods to avoid the process server for the divorce. So he then threatens in writing to kill the now ex-wife's XO and chaplain, except now it's wartime, so they throw him in the brig for military charges instead of civilian charges, so mama can't buy him free. And in the brig, he brags to everyone about how he tried to kill a sailor by flooding a ship's compartment years ago. So he gets charges of 1 sabotage, 2 attempted murders, 2 threatening murder, and all sorts of lesser charges. Dishonorable discharge, and just got out 14 years later. He managed all this in just 4 months. Source: I'm the ex-wife. The fastest way I screwed my life up was drugs. I got in a bad car accident in 2014 and had a bunch of surgeries and spent 5 months in the hospital. Afterwards, I was an opiate-addicted mess who eventually developed PTSD and was prescribed enough alprazolam to effectively erase about a year of my life. I've somehow managed to zombie my way through college and I graduate this May. My GPA sucks and I don't know if I'll be able to get in the nursing program at MUSC. I've been sober for a month now, and it felt like getting kicked by a whole football team for the first 2 weeks. I laid in a fetal position on the couch and watched 10 seasons of Cheers on Netflix, ate crackers and ginger ale, and I'm somehow still alive. Thanks for all the support. I really appreciate it. It helps knowing other people have had it worse and everything worked out for them. I put a no opiate directive in with my primary care doctor to stay on the safe side. People in my high school who drove like idiots and got themselves killed. Some of them were drunk, but even when they were sober, they did stupid stuff on the road. One guy got impatient and tried to pass a car and plowed into oncoming traffic and died. I remember on the way to a senior skip day celebration, I struggled to keep up with everyone else because they were all doing 100 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone. One girl got plastered and wrapped her car around a tree. One guy fell out of a car because he was drunk and fooling around. And every freaking time, people shed tears and ask, why did the good die young? As if it isn't going to happen to one of the other dozens of idiots driving like jerkwads a few months later. One guy got impatient and tried to pass a car and plowed into oncoming traffic and died. I saved an idiot from this. We're all stuck behind a slow-moving truck or whatever, and due to oncoming traffic, we can't overtake. This is life. It sucks, but oh well. Then some idiot starts playing chicken and leapfrogging car by car, barely making it back into the right lane before the oncoming traffic that had been braking hard not to hit him zoomed past. I'm the one behind the truck, with massive, long vehicle notices on it, and then I see two things. Him edging to try and leapfrog me and an 18-wheeler in the other lane. Honestly, I could have let him die. Instead, I did perhaps the stupidest thing I've ever done in a car. Right before he pulled out to try and fly past me, I yanked the wheel over and blocked him, brake checked him, and sent him swerving and braking back into the other lane. I got back into my lane about a half second before the 18-wheeler screamed past, leaning on his horn. The dude would have had no chance to pass if he'd been in that lane and would have hit the 18-wheeler head on 100%. As a thank you, he floored it past both me and the truck 10 seconds later on a blind corner, flipping me off as he did so. This was 7 to 8 years ago. I'm pretty sure he's dead by now. My mom's friend's foster daughter was about a month from graduating high school. She was a straight A student and she had a bright and promising future ahead of her. As far as anyone knew, she was a perfect, good girl. But literally the day she turned 18, she disappeared. Her mom thought the worst, like she'd been kidnapped or killed. She didn't hear from her at all for about 2 weeks. The cops were looking for her but turning up nothing. Then one day, she walks in the front door like nothing happened. As it turned out, on her 18th birthday and the subsequent couple weeks, she dropped out of school, got a really ugly tattoo that covers a large portion of the side of her torso, moved in a house with a couple of guys, which it was later found out that they were having gangbangs with her every day, blew a bunch of money on drugs. Then, when her mother yelled at her for making her worry and for doing so much stupid crap, she freaked out on her mom and left again that same day, disappearing for another several weeks. She came back to collect some of her things and decided she was moving across the country to live with her crackhead real mother that she was taken away from as a baby and never had anything to do with for her entire life. Today, roughly 5 years later, she has 2 babies from different dads, never went to college, and works at Walmart. She could have done anything she wanted, but she decided to screw up everything and go partying instead of just staying in school one more month. This may not be as bad as some of the other answers, but a friend of mine took out a loan for $250,000. I promise I am not exaggerating this number, to pay for her dream wedding to a guy she had known for 3 months. They got divorced after less than a year and she is still in debt from it. The course of a weekend, he met a girl at a party on Friday, put in his resignation at work, and sent an email to his advisor he was giving up his grad program on Saturday and moved across the continent with a girl he met by Monday morning. Last I heard about him, his friends gathered money to fly his homeless butt home 2 years later, and he's been jobless and crashing on people's couches ever since. So, not a permanent mess up, but I've had 4 friends ruin their life over World of Warcraft. Kind of a happy ending, I guess. 4 very close friends of mine all graduated high school at the same time. They all went to college. I joined the Marine Corps. We were all nerds and were all familiar with MMOs and Blizzard. World of Warcraft had really started getting hot, but there was just no freaking way I could play it. But they all started. This was 2006-ish. Fast forward 8 years. I had finished my enlistment and went to college. Me and 2 of those guys are graduating college together with our bachelors. Another one never went back, and the 4th one had to join the Navy because he failed so many classes that his debt was astronomical and he couldn't get back into school. The culprit? World of Warcraft. These guys were putting in 12 hours a day for years on that game. They all failed, all dropped out, all had to pick up the pieces years later after they got their lives back on track. They're all doing well now. None of us, myself included, will touch MMORPGs. Seriously, if you see your life headed down the drain because of an MMO, make changes. These guys lost 4 years of their lives over essentially nothing.
English teachers, what is the most disturbing story/assessment a student has ever submitted? English teacher here. Had an 8th grade student write a "My life at this moment" letter to themselves that they write at the beginning of the year and read to themselves at the end. I always have a rule that they get full credit if I can just see writing on it and it's coherent English. Though if they definitely don't want me to read it, they should staple it and I'll just look for writing. I had a girl who went over the top to look, act and sound, and be a boy. She wasn't trans, so I was a bit confused on how exactly she wanted to be viewed. So I just pretended she was tomboy-ish. She was also insanely defiant to her male teachers, and I worked my butt off to build a relationship with her. She wouldn't have it, though I was kind as I could be. Anyway, the time of year came for me to pass back their letters. By this time, this girl had been moved to a digital learning lab and had been isolated from the Gen Pop. I passed all the letters out and found hers had been left unstapled, though I didn't remember reading it or noticing it wasn't sealed. Curiosity overcame me, so I opened it. My heart broke when I read her rather detailed desire to be away from her stepdad by the end of the year, and her goal for that year was to escape the God-forsaken hellhole. Long story short, that letter ended up being used in court to put her stepdad away for committing the unspeakable act against her viciously for many years. I felt bad for her, but hopefully she's been able to move on, though I doubt it. The description was pretty rough of what he did to her. I teach high school creative writing, and I gave an assignment where students had to rewrite a fairy tale from the perspective of the villain or a smaller character, like the giant or golden goose in Jack and the Beanstalk. A young woman asked me if she could submit a fan fiction she had already started, and I said of course, as long as she finished it and followed the instructions. She submitted a tangled fan fiction, but it was actually a story where the prince goes in and commits the unspeakable act against the evil queen, and it was graphic. I had to call her parents, counselors, principals. It was a whole thing, and very awkward. From that point on, I had to explicitly tell my students that I was a mandated reporter and what that means, and that they had to keep everything PG. Last year, a 5th grade student submitted a poem into our fair contest. Every student in the whole school K5 submits something, so they don't really get read. They just hang them up at the fair and slap a first place sticker on half and a second place sticker on the other half. His poem, which I cannot completely remember, went something like this. That is my girl. She's a lot of fun. If something you said tries to steal her, I'll take my gun and I'll shoot your head. With a picture to accompany it. Someone browsing the poems at the fair had a fit about it, and we had to call his mum and have a talk and everything. It was really great when the mum asked why in the world there was a big first place sticker on it. Well, it's good to see that the judges were as attentive as the people putting the poems up. Consistency all round. In a university English class, we had a weekly peer review assignment. One dude in the group I was assigned turned in a story, a fiction about werewolves and college students, best friends out in a pre-graduation cabin in the woods party, and it was bad. His writing style was so terrible and immature? We all ended up messaging the instructor individually to find out how much work we were expected to put in to editing his story. Normally we would comment on the story, with whatever little corrections may need to be made, but this thing was all run-on sentences and wrong grammar. It was nuts. For example, the friend was running in the woods as the other guy was driving at her as he tried to hit her as the other friends screamed as the werewolf chased the car as he hit her as she rolled on the roof of the car and the werewolf found her body as she was trying to get up. It was brutal. He was taking the class to be a screenwriter. I still feel bad for him, and it's been over a decade. I would like to tell a story on behalf of my high school creative writing teacher, because I know how much she hated one of my projects, because she refused to display it with everyone else's. We had an assignment to write a poem from the perspective of a person facing a difficult life choice. We were to display our poem three-dimensionally, however we liked, written on a pyramid, words hanging from a mobile, etc., etc. I decided I wanted to write a poem about a man during the Blitz, who abandons his family in terror and runs out into the night to die in the bombing. The poem that I still remember, word for word, 2 fricking decades later, is as follows. The smile rests upon my face, shows not my fallen grace. You see the hell I was exposed, that caused my fearful juxtapose, caused me to leave my family and save myself in time of need. I am the doorstep to the grave, my hell-bent path forever paved. I then took this clearly deranged poem and scribbled it in black marker in concentric circles around a very realistic plastic skull I had brought in for the occasion. I gave this crime against nature to my very nice, very liberal creative art teacher who wondered why she had chosen to create this assignment in the first place. She gave me an A and refused to display it with the rest of the normal class projects, clearly the best decision for everyone involved. One of my kids was from Mexico and wrote about watching his neighbors get gunned down by the cartel. Because he and his dad had seen it, they told the police and offered to try to help. While they were talking with the police, they let them into the crime scene, and he wrote about his shoes turning red because they got wet with so much blood. It absolutely broke my heart. He was 11 and said that that was the reason his family came to America. All of these remind me of the time when my little brother wrote a story about our cat that got squished by a door. The teacher contacted my mum saying that she was worried if the story was true. We don't have a cat. A kid wrote a whole story detailing exactly how he was going to murder me. He came in with a knife a month later and tried to stab another boy in the back. I hope he's doing better now. When I was in high school, I wrote a hypothetical story about a drowning person. Every detail was written so that it would imply an incoming rescue. The essay continuously was hopeful about the fate of the person. I prolonged the narrative till the end. In the last sentence, I write something along the lines of, "The person is just drowning and slipping to the end of the sea, where they would never be found." I'm glad I'm not the only one who scared their teacher by writing this sort of assignment from the perspective of a drowning person. I'm sorry, fourth form English teacher. I promise I didn't have a death wish. Had my kids write a faux cover letter for a year abroad in Australia, in which they, among other things, had to give reasons why they wanted to go to Australia. Here's what one of my students came up with. I'd like to see some wild animals, koalas, kangaroos, and maybe some aborigines. Guy claimed it wasn't meant to be as racist as it looks at the first glance, and that he simply messed up at the construction. And I actually tend to believe it, seeing as how it was an ESL class in Germany, and he really wasn't one of the top students of the class. But then, in another essay, would you rather do an internship or a paid summer job? He said that he'd do the summer job, so he'd have money for gambling, so he definitely was a bit on the weird side. I remember for my English class, we had a project that we were supposed to do over the entire year and turn it in at the end. I had the idea to write a series of horror story vignettes for mine. I did not hold back with the language or graphic violence. I wrote a story about a guy who is very depressed and tries to kill himself, but is saved by a beautiful woman and they get married and have kids. And then one day they're at a mall and a gunman fatally shoots his family in front of him. And he slowly loses his mind through the rest of the story and ends up doing what the gunman did and kills another family and then kills himself. Another story was about a man whose addict best friend goes missing and tries to find him, then ends up being trapped in a torture-like compound, where he is then forced to murder his friend to get out, only to find that the compound was never ending. I got a 100 and the best grade in the class. My teacher said they were so well written she found herself crying and losing sleep over the stories, so she thought I deserved a good grade. I'm sorry, Mrs. Creelman. Had a student submit a paper about growing up with an addict teen brother. He had the room next to her, and sometimes when getting clean, the parents would lock him in his room, and he would have raging withdrawals. She was very young, so I imagine there was a lot of medical care and therapy going on that she didn't know about. She just remembered that her brother was screaming and crying in the next room, and she would sit in her closet all night long, terrified he was going to break through the wall and get her. It was such a heart-rending story, and it made me view what families go through in such a different light. Second-hand account from a colleague submitted during a workshop in an undergraduate non-fiction writing class. Story was about 18 pages and was submitted by a 50-ish male. Talks about a 12-year-old girl who is not the man's daughter but belongs to him and is his wife. Talking about how they like to stroke her and caress her nude body and make her eat things out of her hand. They put collars on her and constantly refer to her perfect hairy undercarriage and so forth. The rest of the class read the story for the workshop and in disgust and horror email the professor, colleague, who immediately cancelled the workshop and contacted administration about the student. The thing is, everyone was so shocked by the nature of the story that no one got to the very last line in which it is revealed that the girl is a cat. Obviously the student was looking for some sort of reaction, which he got. Abuse, abuse, and more abuse. Assigning anything that asks them to reflect on something personal or write something creative has a high chance of yielding stories about abuse. These stories very likely reflect real experiences. Many a visit are paid to the guidance counselors and school therapists. If you don't work with kids, you might be shocked to learn just how many people are abused in some fashion. If you add in how many kids aren't abused but just have a bad upbringing, it gets really, really depressing. Yes, I thought there would be a lot more funny stories in this topic, but it turns out the key word was disturbing, so here are some stories that shocked me. I hope we all have our eyes opened a little. Now, let's at least throw some levity in here with this next one. Someone wrote a fan fiction of her and Kermit the Frog, and I've not been the same since. Students were annotating old news articles about a very famous axe murderer from the late 1800s. One student includes an annotation about how the article reminded her of her father. She helpfully included his name for me to Google, and yep, that's how I found out my student's dad is literally an axe murderer. Second place goes to a student who wrote from the point of view of the Zodiac Killer for a creative writing assignment. It was incredibly well written. If it hadn't been, it honestly might not have been so disturbing. But being in the killer's head as he ties up and stabs young couples to death? No thanks. Oh, and last week someone submitted a horror story in creative writing. I swear to God, she could be a writer for the Saw movies. The deaths were graphic and gruesome and creative. I had to take breaks while reading it because I'm pretty squeamish. It might get buried, but I need to chime in, mostly in the hopes that this student finds my comment and knows how much his story stuck with me. The first assignment of the semester was to write about life at the university through a sociological lens. This guy who was social, well-liked, in a frat turned in this shocking story. He was writing about how hard his life was, how he had to scrounge for meals from the trash while seeing all the other students eat happily in the dining halls. He described how he'd seen his friends struck by cars on the winding mountain roads on campus. I was so taken back, and I kept reading anxiously to see if the story would take a turn. A squirrel. The kid was writing from the perspective of a squirrel. This kid was a genius. I told him later how impressed I was, and he shrugs in a very bro way, stating, "That's the worst thing I've ever written. If you see this, Matt, that's still my favorite paper by a student." Not an English teacher, but when I was in junior college, I was a TA for a psych instructor, and I read and graded essays. There was an assignment for students to create an experiment where they trained themselves to create a habit by rewarding themselves after the task. Think Pavlov. One male student wrote about his experiment. He chose to train himself to jerk it more often, and his reward was more jerking. And he wrote about it in detail. Very sustainable system, but so weird to submit to your instructor. I have my high school students write a defining moment memoir about a moment where their lives changed in a significant way. I generally see some stories about childhood abuse and things of that nature where I make sure our social work team is aware of their claims. They're getting support, and that's basically it. However, I did once get a story about the first time a girl in my class had smoked Mary J. Except the whole thing was written with the substance anthropomorphized as a beautiful woman named Mary that she met and took on a beautiful all-night date. This thing was about 3 pages long and graphic. We're talking full anatomical descriptions of lesbian fun times as an analogy for the experience of getting lit for the first time. It just kept going, and it was extremely well written to the point that I was really uncomfortable reading it and had to put it away. The worst part is, she was super excited for me to read it and came in the next day asking about it. "Did you like it? I'm super proud." And I had to basically say, "Yeah, it's super well written, but honestly, I just can't be reading something like that written by one of my students." As someone whose childhood was mundane and drama-free, the idea of having to write a memoir about a defining moment of my life to that point would send me into a blind panic of, what the frick do I possibly write about? Even now, as an adult, I would struggle to pick any one moment that changed my life. I'm right there with you, commenter. Even at the age of 30, I'm not entirely sure I could pinpoint any single defining moment. I like to think that they happen on a day-to-day basis. I like the next commenter's approach to the problem. Freshman year of college, I took a class called Interpersonal Communication. One of the projects was that we had to make a presentation introducing ourselves to the class and talk about the moments in our lives that we found significant and/or were proud of. The bulk of my presentation was about the fact that I was 19 and from a middle-class family in the suburbs of nowhere, and aside from not failing at life up to that point, I didn't really have any major achievements I was proud of. My teacher was annoyed, but I fulfilled all of the requirements, so I think I got like a B. Really though, I would have felt like a jackass standing in front of a group of people talking about basic life crap as if they were accomplishments, right after an older, non-traditional student had presented an entirety of their life, having children, grandchildren, etc. That person had decades more experience and actual life accomplishments to talk about. I was just some dumb kid. I'm still a dumb kid even though I'm 26, but that's life. Basically a manifesto about how the student felt ostracized from the school and how he wanted revenge. This was a community college. He was a freshman. Over the semester, I could tell he struggled, yet he was also insanely talented. Some of the other students in class bullied him in my presence, and let's just say I didn't tolerate that at all. I spent extra time talking to him and trying to help him one-on-one. One day he turns in an assignment talking about his desire to exact revenge for his marginalization. He was triggered when everyone on his floor conspired to trick him to go outside at night and in the middle of winter, and then they locked him out of the dorm. Buttholes. I spoke with him immediately about it, and he assured me it was just hyperbole. Regardless, I did have to notify my supervisor. I also spoke with his RA, but the RA couldn't care less. The student ended up dropping out shortly after this. We stayed in touch for a bit, but after a while I don't know what happened to him. He was probably the smartest student I had in that class, yet he couldn't make it because of his own personal problems and torment from other students. Ugh. I was working with a small group of Year 7 students, and we did this exercise where the kids have to create a story using a randomly assigned setting, character, and theme. So this one boy ends up with a war zone, a princess, and unrequited love. He proceeded to turn these innocuous prompts into a hilariously messed up story. Set during World War II, it's told from the perspective of the Princess of the UK, who wakes up on the battlefield to find German soldiers shooting at her. Suddenly, someone behind her kills her attackers. She turns around to see her rescuer. It's the leader of the Third Reich. In fear, she runs into a medical tent. He is in close pursuit. In the tent, she decides to confront the Führer, but upon locking eyes with him, realizes he's the most beautiful man she's ever seen, falling in love immediately. He, however, walks right past her and kisses a passing nurse. Furious and jealous, the Princess of the UK kills the nurse in a fit of rage, then flees the medical tent, returning to the battlefield before the sad and baffling conclusion to the story. And then I died. So not disturbing as such, but certainly unexpected. I teach, but not English. I had to once write up a middle school student, I don't remember for what, but it was serious since I hate writing up, and they turned in their assignment for that day with none of it done. In its place was a half-page description of all the things their dad would do to them if he found out they were written up again. It started pretty mild, say, take the phone away, to more serious things like no food or water. By the time I saw it, they were already out the door, so I hopped over to the counselor and let them have a copy of it. Not sure what happened after that since it was out of my hands, and I'm not sure if it was true or not. They tended to be overdramatic and stretch the truth in class, but I took it very seriously. I've definitely been more purposeful and welcoming in my interactions with them from here on out. Got to make sure that the classroom is a safe and good place for them. I was the student. We were told to create an invention that'll help the human race. Basically write 3 paragraphs down and turn it in. Several classmates came up with machines to stop cancer, medical equipment, things to help homeless people. I'm at a loss, so I decided to rip off the self-euthanizing machine from Futurama and basically wrote down that you can choose fast, slow, painful, or painless death. It can help people who have painful diseases die for just a quarter. Needless to say, I was put on a close watch list, and I had a counselor until I graduated high school. We have middle schoolers put together a portfolio at the end of the year for all of their reading logs, and the essay they are most proud of, and a revision of their essay that they think they could improve the most. It's a big culmination project that involves a letter at the beginning to the grader where they need to explain what they've learned and how their habits have changed, and stuff like that. Easily some of the funniest crap I've ever read in those letters, and I still have pictures of my favorite intros, but the most disturbing one was about a boy who explained in detail that he broke his habit of not doing his reading by reading while he poops. I've been given some pretty gruesome horror story stuff, but it's usually based on crap the students have watched. This week alone, I've read 2 Red Dead Redemption 2 ripoffs, so I'd settle for anything original. Not a teacher, but when I was in 9th grade, a kid in my class wrote a story about a student planting bombs around the school, and a group of students teaming up to defuse the bombs and catch him. It was pretty cool, but it lost its luster when the kid made a bomb threat to the school a week later. Maybe not exactly what you were looking for, but I'm an ESL teacher. One class we were talking about different holidays and how we celebrate them. This one student was trying to explain Mother's Day, but didn't know the exact name of it. When I asked him to explain the holiday so I could tell him the name we use, he said, "It's the day where I pleasure my mother." When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.